I had a dream. A blizzard raged in my dream. In the deep night, amidst a snowy field of white trees, a man was running. He gasped for breath, his breathing ragged. He wore a thin white garment, unsuitable for the frigid weather, a simple cotton robe. Or rather, a robe now crimson, soaked through with blood. As the man ran desperately, he muttered to himself, questioning why someone wanted him dead. The skin exposed beneath his fluttering robe was pale and riddled with wounds. He kept repeating, just a little further, urging himself onward in a specific direction. All the while, he glanced over his shoulder, as if someone were chasing him. His frantic run never ceased. Bang! A sharp whistling sound sliced through the air. An arrow struck its target, the leg of a man desperately fleeing. He lost his balance and crashed to the ground, crying out in pain. Shouts rose up behind him. "We found him! After him!" The man scrambled frantically on the ground, trying to crawl forward, but it was a futile struggle. A man emerged from the raging blizzard. He was powerfully built, with a broad, rugged face. The fallen man recognized him as Shin Woo-hyun. Shin Woo-hyun confirmed he was the man's mentor. "Have you found him?" Shin Woo-hyun shouted. "Everyone gather here." A group of sword-wielding warriors appeared behind Shin Woo-hyun. They immediately surrounded the fallen man. Seon Woo-hyun commented that if the man had just stayed quiet, his death wouldn't have been so agonizing. Just moments ago in the real-life game chat room, Top Supreme Gox entered the room. Top Supreme, Gig said. "I didn't think anyone was still here. I thought everyone had left." I replied with a "Heyo," and asked where everyone had gone. Did everyone move on to a new game or something? Top Supreme, Gox, seemed surprised by this. This strangely nicknamed guy was the one who created this chat room in the first place. I was happy to see him. He started typing furiously, but he went on to ask me if I had cleared the entire game. I was about to say that I had, but I stopped myself. I figured if I told him, the news would spread instantly. After all, I had completed the Ryu Beck gun route. He wanted to wait until more people were in the chat to make his announcement. He felt that bragging with an audience would be much more satisfying. He even mocked himself, saying that veteran players all eventually become show-offs. This was a single-player action RPG, virtual reality game called Hero's Path, released 4 years ago. The game was set in a modern world, where portals had appeared, connecting it to another world. Monsters poured out of these portals, and hunters fought them, initially with its charming and diverse cast of playable characters, excellent gameplay, and countless hidden elements. Hero's Path was praised for its exceptional quality and became incredibly popular. News articles from back then claimed that the whole world was caught in Hero's Path fever. How long can this craze last? However, the game's difficulty was incredibly high. Players complained relentlessly. Luo Xing questioned if the game could even be beaten. Hanahuo commented that the game was fun, but the difficulty was outrageous. "I can't go on," one player lamented. Oswald079 inquired, "Has anyone completed a single route with any character? Please share any strategies." Globally, perhaps only 0.1% of players had cleared the game, and that was using the easier, more manageable characters. No one had beaten it with the higher difficulty characters. Thus, it became known as a game that, even with a guide, was impossible to finish. Can this even be called a game? At least let us skip the tutorial where common complaints. Casual players gave up and uninstalled the game in droves. Even the hardcore players, filled with frustration, began to be eliminated one by one. But I managed to completely conquer it. Everyone else had given up on this game. He thought about how it was a 4-year-old game, with only 5 playable characters, and he was the first to complete all the character routes. He wanted to show off, so he took off his VR headset and immediately logged onto his computer to a chat room called Hero's Path Conquerors. This chat room had entry requirements. Only those who had completed at least one route in Hero's Path could enter, since the completion rate was less than 0.1%. There weren't many members. He typed, "I've finished all routes except for Ryu Baekjun's. All of them are done." Top Supreme Dog's ex-listen-up replied, "Really?" and said he'd check. Then he said, "Forget it. No one's cleared that route anyway. They even claimed someone could beat the entire game." I was confused. I replied, "What are you even talking about?" Then, usernames, let's call him Top Gamer, wanted to make a bet. He challenged me to try and beat the game, using a route he would choose. He said I wouldn't be able to do it anyway, but if I did, he would grant me one wish. I asked him what kind of wish. Top Gamer said literally anything. Want to be rich, want to be good-looking, it can be done. He claimed he could make it happen. I couldn't help but wonder if he was planning to, like, pay for someone to get plastic surgery or something. The offer felt strange and very suspicious. So I asked him what would happen if I lost. Top Gamer said, "We'll think about that when you lose." Then he asked me again if I wanted to try. I hesitated for a moment, thinking to myself, should I really accept such a dubious offer? I thought refusing wouldn't be a bad idea either. Then again, I figured I wouldn't lose anything if I lost. Though I didn't know if he would actually grant a wish, but realistically there wasn't any real downside.
After thinking it over for a long time,
I replied as ideal player with, "I'll give it a try," indicating that I accepted the wager. Top Supreme Gox replied, "Okay." He also said that I was the last one. Out of all the players so far, he said I was the best. Just then, the monitor started acting strange. The display began to distort violently. It wasn't just the screen. My entire vision became distorted. Top Supreme Gox said, "This is no longer just a game. For you, it will become reality. No matter what the outcome would be, a wave of intense dizziness washed over me." Top Supreme Gods X said this was the path I chose. Then I lost consciousness. The next thing I knew, I was dreaming of that opening scene. I realized I had become Ryu Baekjun. I was now in Ryu Baekjun's body. Ryu Baekjun demanded to know why Shin Woo-hyun had done this. Shin Woo-hyun replied, "This is all a desperate man can do when running for his life." He then kicked Ryu Baekjun in the arm. With a sickening crunch, the wound on Ryu Baekjun's arm reopened. Blood gushed out. Shin Woo-hyun continued, "For someone in line to inherit the Sword Saint family, your actions are truly pathetic." Ryu Baekjun's movements were indeed pitiful. Ryu Baekjun asked who sent Shin Woo-hyun. He wondered if it was his older brother. Ryu Baekjun asked who sent Shin Woo-hyun. He wondered if it was his brother. Shin Woo-hyun let out a sinister laugh. He confirmed that it was Ryu Baekjun's brother who wanted him dead. He said he had Ryu Baekjun brought here and disguised the attack as a monster. It took quite a bit of effort. Shin Woo-hyun raised his sword. At that moment, Ryu Baekjun's blood dripped from the blade onto the snow. Ryu Baekjun pleaded for his life. Shin Woo-hyun said, "For old time's sake," he would make it quick. He told Ryu Baekjun not to worry. He would soon be joined by his servant Song. And Choi Sung-myung. Ryu Baekjun trembled. Shin Woo-hyun smiled, raised his sword high, and said Ryu Baekjun wouldn't be alone. Ryu Baekjun wondered what was happening, unable to comprehend the situation. He recalled the wager proposed by Top Supreme Gox X. After accepting it, suddenly, his vision blurred. The moment he realized this, a sharp pain shot through Ryu Baekjun's entire body. He felt nauseous. His vision began to spin. He wondered why it hurt so much. Because if he truly entered the hero's path, according to the law, pain receptors in the virtual reality game must be deactivated. He shouldn't be in this much pain. A sudden gust of wind carrying a blizzard swept in. Ryu Baekjun cried out, "Blizzard!" Instantly, everything before his eyes turned white. The burly man, including Shin Woo-hyun, lost their footing. Shin Woo-hyun cursed, because his sword missed. Ryu Baekjun immediately got to his feet, dragging his trembling body. Ryu Baekjun ran for his life. Shin Woo-hyun noticed Ryu Baekjun's escape and tried to give chase immediately. However, the blizzard made it impossible. He shouted out, demanding to know where Ryu Baekjun had gone and in which direction. Just then, someone reported to Shin Woo-hyun that monsters were swarming in from behind. Shin Woo-hyun frowned, turned and saw snowfield monsters approaching through the blizzard. He cursed and ordered his men to use the acquired artifact, saying it was the only way to track Ryu Baekjun. They had to deal with the monsters first. Shin Woo-hyun and his men quickly began to eliminate the monsters. But by the time the battle was over, they assumed Ryu Baekjun couldn't have gotten far. But by then, Ryu Baekjun had long vanished into the blizzard. Ryu Baekjun trudged through the biting wind. The blizzard raged fiercely, but it didn't obscure his vision as much as he'd expected. Upon reaching what he believed to be the right spot, he entered a nearby forest. In a small clearing within the woods, Ryu Baekjun knelt down. He frantically dug at the ground beside a tree with his bare hands. As he dug, he muttered to himself, "I never realized when I was playing the game. You'll do just how much of a hellish experience. You digging in the snow with your bare hands could be." Finally, a flower buried beneath the snow emerged. Ryu Baekjun recognized it as a snowflower herb. It looked like a flower but was, in fact, a medicinal herb. Ryu Baekjun gathered the snowflower herb, and some other herbs he'd found together in one spot. He used a stone to crush them vigorously, then he applied the crushed herbs, which resembled a poultice, to a severe wound. The system alerted him, despite the clumsy technique, your excellent understanding of herbal components has resulted in the successful concoction of a new salve. It then displayed unnamed salve used. It further explained that for a period of time, his wounds would begin to heal, and he would gain increased cold resistance. Liu Baijun breathed a sigh of relief. The previous feeling, as if his body was being torn apart by the cold, lessened considerably. Although he was still cold, it no longer hindered his movement. Liu Baijun figured he needed to gather more herbs, so he started searching around, collecting as many herbs as he could find. At the same time, he estimated that the salve's duration was about 30 minutes. His wounds were healing, but very slowly, and he had lost a lot of blood, so he had to come up with a countermeasure before the ointment wore off. Yu Bak-gyun noticed a message that had just popped up, realizing that the hero's path system still existed and could be utilized. He opened his status window. His strength was 1% F. Agility was 1% F. Stamina was 1% F. Vitality was 1% F. Unique ability, none. Traits, none. Skills, none. It was an utterly terrible status window. This was one of the reasons why Yu Baek-gyun's path was the most difficult. He was simply too weak. The Sword Saint family resided in the snowy mountains of Korea. It was founded by an awakened being known as the Martial God. The Martial God put an end to a long ago. The Dimensional Gate incident occurred. However, at some point, the Martial God vanished. Based on the Martial God's remaining books containing martial arts insights, the Sword Saint family flourished. They became a prestigious clan in Korea. Yu Baek-gyun, as the youngest son of the family, was no ordinary member. He was one of the family's 5 children who were locked in a fierce inheritance struggle. Yu Baek-gyun becoming the head of the family was impossible. Yu Baek-gyun thought with a bitter smile. Even so, there was still someone who hated him, to the point of wanting him dead. That person was his dear older brother. Yu Baek-gyun thought to himself, F-rank attributes are the lowest possible. I'm basically no different from a walking scarecrow. I'm practically useless. He also lamented that, from the very beginning, he was thrust into an extremely dangerous situation. The slightest carelessness or mistake meant death. And there were pursuers, too. He thought about the other players' routes, the main characters Han Chang-woo and Golden Rock, the supporting characters, Peng Su-young and Kang Yi-jun. All 4 of them had difficult paths, but each had their own advantages in certain areas. None of them were pushed into such extreme circumstances from the start. He truly had nothing. The worst stats, no helpful items. His situation in the early stages of the game was extremely dire. An ordinary person would have given up, complaining about how unfair the game was. Only a hardcore player could overcome this. Yu Baek-gyun exhaled a white breath. He told himself, think. As he breathed in the frigid air, he pondered what he needed to do to survive in this place from now on. More fundamentally, how could he survive on this path? He thought that if this were the path in the Ubaek County game, the location would essentially be the same. He gazed into the depths of the forest, concluding that there was only one way, because this seemingly endless forest led to the heart of Hakuno. At its center lay a labyrinthine maze, teeming with monstrous creatures. That place was known as the Labyrinth Forest, but within it lay the hope of survival. So he decided to set off. There was no more room for hesitation or doubt. As Ubaek-gun ventured deeper into the forest, his surroundings grew darker, and he began to hear strange sounds, like a howling sound, a grunting sound. He knew these were the sounds of monsters. In the world of Hero's Path, monsters are humanity's primary enemy. Monsters appearing on Earth are all eliminated by hunters. But here is different. This is Snow Moon Mountain. The game is set in the modern era. But this Snow Moon Mountain is far removed from modern society. The reason is the appearance of numerous portals and monsters. Ryu Baekgyun walked straight ahead, silently counting his steps in his mind. After a while, he suddenly turned left, then continued forward. His steps showed no hesitation. Ryu Baekgyun considered that if he didn't know this path, he would wander lost in the forest. And once the ointment's duration wore off, he would die. If this were a game, he could start over. But right now, that wasn't an option. Failure meant wandering lost in the forest until death. Liu Baijun quickly searched his memories, realizing this was the 7th time he'd been here. Aware of the danger, he immediately hid behind a tree. Suddenly, a giant serpent with white scales dropped from the tree above. It slithered its massive body, scanning its surroundings. Liu Baijun silently prayed for it to leave quickly. He knew that if he wasn't careful and continued on, he would be caught and eaten by the serpent. The perilous situation seemed to declare that ignorance of danger meant death. It was filled with malice. Soon the serpent slithered away. Only then did Liu Baijun get up and continue on his way. He traveled like this for 20 minutes. Liu Baijun gasped for breath. Due to his poor attributes, walking for extended periods was extremely difficult for him. His entire body ached, as if he had undergone hours of strength training. Liu Baijun contemplated slowing down, moving slowly. Just then, he made a strange move. He suddenly pulled out some ground-up herbs from his waist and began to scatter them on the ground. He thought to himself, from this point on, something will happen within 3 minutes. Then he started to run. His body was at its limit, movement difficult, but he had to run here. He ran as fast as he could along the path. He didn't know how long he ran. Liu Baijun gasped for breath, his energy almost completely depleted. But he couldn't stop. As he ran, he looked at the axe he had just picked up. He swallowed hard, then closed his eyes tightly. With the axe, he chopped at his own arm. A jolt of intense pain shot through him. Blood dripped from Liu Baijun's wound onto the ground. He knew he couldn't hold on for much longer. Leaving a trail of blood, he pressed forward. After some time, he finally emerged from the forest. A gust of wind swept through, revealing a wide, snow-covered clearing. In the center of the clearing was a chasm of unknown depth. Liu Baijun remembered the despair he felt the first time he came here. He had thought he'd found a way out only to find a cliff. He felt like he'd wasted his time. But that wasn't the case this time. Liu Baijun stumbled forward. Suddenly, someone called his name. He turned around and saw behind him, emerging from the forest he'd just left, a group of people. Leading the group was Shinwoo Hyun. It was Shinwoo Hyun and his men. They were following Feng's orders, relentlessly pursuing Ryu Baekjun all the way here. Shinwoo Hyun gave a wry smile. He pulled out a compass-like device from his pocket. He indicated that Ryu Baekjun thought he could shake them off. Ryu Baekjun knew. It was a tracker's mark, a single-use artifact. It allowed the user to cast tracking magic, and not just ordinary tracking magic. It could discern the target's exact path, and the target was Ryu Baekjun. Shinwoo Hyun looked at the cliff, implying Ryu Baekjun believed he could escape death by reaching this point, but the place he desperately struggled to reach was a dead end, a cliff. Then he raised his fist. The pursuers fanned out, encircling Ryu Baekjun. They declared that this was where he would die. Ryu Baekjun stumbled backward, his breath catching in his throat. He knew that at his current speed, he would be caught. But somehow it didn't seem to matter. He looked at Shinwoo Hyun, standing behind him, a look in his eyes that suggested things might not be over yet. Ryu Baekjun's eyes trembled as he looked at the cliff. Before him was a bottomless, dark abyss. The chance of survival from a fall was practically zero. He let out a shaky breath. In all his time playing games, he had never felt this primal terror of death. It washed over him, making his body tremble uncontrollably. He laughed hollowly at the absurdity of it all. He had been completely tricked by that damned Supreme Lord. That guy didn't mention the risks. He vaguely said if I failed, we'd talk then. Just then, someone called out to Ryu Baekjun. Ryu Baekjun shot back. Did you think I couldn't clear it? Then he jumped off the cliff. He plunged into endless darkness. Ryu Baekjun realized that the risk was death. He figured that guy probably thought that he wouldn't agree if he knew, so he didn't mention it. He was so naive. Who would have thought accepting the offer would actually put him inside the game itself? He cursed the guy under his breath. A vicious smile spread across Ryu Baekjun's face. He may have been tricked, but he'd tricked the other guy too. The guy probably thought he couldn't clear this route and pushed himself in. But this was a huge miscalculation. Because he was a hardcore player, he believed this route wouldn't pose a problem. Just then, the blood Baekjun Ryu had left on the cliff played a crucial role. A sense of foreboding washed over Woo Hyun Shin. He turned to look. At that moment, a horde of bipedal monsters with shimmering silver fur, bloodhound kin, swarmed towards them. They howled, claiming to smell blood. Woo Hyun thought of the deep wound on Baekjun's arm. He gritted his teeth and blamed Baekjun, saying that the scent of blood would drive these monsters into a frenzy. A terrifying realization dawned on Woo Hyun. Baekjun had led the monsters to them. Woo Hyun was shocked, because they hadn't fully grasped the situation with the monsters in this forest. While it seemed like it was Ryu Baekjun's first time in this forest, He possessed this knowledge. Shin Woo-hyun felt that Baekjun had complete mastery over the forest. He made a bold move. Baekjun was falling. More accurately, he was plummeting, falling into a bottomless abyss. His body accelerated downwards even faster. The bottom was nowhere in sight. The feeling of endlessly falling into the abyss washed over Baekjun. He squeezed his eyes shut again. Then, with a thud, Baekjun was thrown onto solid ground. He let out a pained groan. Baekjun writhed on the ground, collapsing. He lamented the state of his body. He felt pain all over his body. He suspected that when he fell from that height, he might have broken something. The heavy blood loss was making him dizzy. Liu Baijun thought about taking the medicine he had prepared with him, but he knew it would only help close his wounds, not restore his strength. He realized with despair that even if he wanted to rest, he couldn't. Liu Baijun lifted his heavy body and slowly looked around. He found himself in a vast cave. The ceiling was embedded with glowing stones, emitting a white light. He wondered if he had reached his destination. In the center of the cave, there were only a few trees and a modest ancient tomb. Inside the tomb, the place where a body should have been was empty. Only a book remained. The book displayed the characters for Martial God. After picking it up, nothing happened. No dazzling light burst forth. No ghosts appeared before his eyes. No voices whispered in his ears. Yu Baekjun cautiously opened the book to the first page. Let's use this as his name consistently. There were words left by the martial god. The text mentioned not knowing who had opened the book, but that it was likely an unknown descendant. It expressed hope that the book would be used for righteous deeds. Yu Baekjun stared at the last sentence, thinking to himself, would I use it for righteous deeds, or just to kill those who deserve to die? After turning this mortal family's world upside down, the Book of the Martial God began to confirm the user's qualifications. It confirmed his bloodline. Then it assessed his physical condition. The result? A body completely devoid of martial arts talent. Needs improvement appeared on the page. These words materialized one after another. After the phrase needs improvement appeared, the letters began to glow. Then the words forcefully awaken the martial god's blood within materialized. To improve physique, it continued. Suddenly, the entire book emitted an intense light. A blinding light, bright enough to cause blindness, erupted. When Liu Baijun opened his eyes again, the book of the martial god had vanished. He looked down at his body. The intense light he had seen moments before was now lingering around his dantian. He realized that the book of the martial god had entered his body. It was a book left behind by a person who had reached the divine level in martial arts on their deathbed. Currently existing in this world, all martial arts techniques are recorded within it. Newly created techniques are also automatically recorded by an unknown force. Points are awarded based on missions or the owner's actions. The owner can use these points to learn the skills recorded in the Book of the Martial God. He checked his own status. It displayed Strength 1% C of the Ubec County Standard, Agility 1% C, Endurance 1% C, Magic Power 1% D, Unique Ability Book of the Martial God X rank 1 star. Special trait Heavenly Martial Body S rank. Skills none. He understood that he was meant to obtain this unique ability and trait. The Ubec County's small heavenly martial body S rank signified a God-given talent for martial arts and a perfectly compatible physique. He could quickly understand and learn any martial art and rapidly strengthen his physique. It would also enhance the power of his skills. He thought it was a truly smile-inducing skill. He remembered that in the game Hero's Path, there were no levels. Players had to improve their attributes through rigorous training and skill proficiency, and this trait would allow him to increase both attributes and skill proficiency faster. With this trait alone, he could accelerate his growth in these areas. Besides that, it also allowed him to learn new skills quickly. It was an incredibly powerful trait that would greatly benefit his development. He knew that unique abilities were special powers possessed only by specific individuals. Unless passed down through special methods, others couldn't learn them. Compared to other controllable characters, this was an ability on a completely different level. It's an ability that can drastically reduce the difficulty of this path. A cheat-like ability. He realized that any skill existing in this world, as long as it falls under martial arts, he could learn. The prerequisite was paying a corresponding price, though he felt a bit disappointed that he couldn't learn magic, or things like alchemy. He felt a tinge of regret, but he understood that there were many other ways, like using skill books, to achieve such learning. Yu Baekjun smiled. Then he used this unique ability The Book of the Martial God appeared in his hand, shimmering with a faint light. At the same time, a small message appeared, indicating that with 100 points, he could accept a new task. Yu Baekjun opened the Book of the Martial God and saw a table of contents. The names on the contents were peculiar. Names like 3 Disaster Swordsmen, Severe Disease Charge, La Perlada Palace Spearmanship, and others were all names of skills, and they were listed in the catalog as skills learnable for 100p. After browsing through the catalog, Yu Baekjun considered which skill to learn. He figured that swordsmanship and the like wouldn't be of much use to him right now. Whether it was swordsmanship or spearmanship, in his current state, fighting itself would be suicidal. Besides, there was no need to fight in the first place. Instead, he needed a way to move quickly. Oh, how he tapped his finger on the entry for light body technique in the catalog. He understood it was a martial art that could lighten the body, allowing for increased speed. With things like agility and reflexes, it was the perfect fit for him right now. He was thinking that once his proficiency with the Martial Gods book increased, he could do some really interesting things. He felt this would not only help him now, but was also a good choice for the future. All right, he thought. It's decided. Just then, information flashed before his eyes. One message in particular stood out, the one indicating that he could accept a new mission. A new mission window popped up. The first mission, come and catch me. The requirement, practice and improve proficiency in the body flicker technique. Constant running might lead to enlightenment, it read. The reward, 100p and attribute enhancement. The second mission, forgive me, founder, but allow me to be a righteous grave robber, just this once. That was the key? The contents are located within the ancient tomb of the Martial God. There are many items prepared for potential visiting reporters. Find and retrieve as many as possible. Find and take as much as you can. Perhaps the founder will forgive you. Rewards will be given in points and items. Rank will vary based on the quantity retrieved. Seeing this description, Yu Baekjun couldn't help but sigh. He felt that being called a grave robber was rather insulting, and what was worse, he couldn't refute it. After accepting the task, a wall in the previously empty cave suddenly opened, revealing a passage, revealing a pathway. Yu Baekjun thought this was a piece of cake and whistled confidently. The Martial God's tomb was structured like a labyrinth, filled with illusions, monster traps, and winding paths. One wrong step could leave you lost forever. Actually, this was quite normal, because this place, it wasn't meant to be accessed. This early in the game. But for Risu, it was irrelevant. To counter illusions and hallucinations, he had gathered herbs from the forest beforehand. By mixing and consuming them, he could resist those status effects. As for the monsters, he knew their spawn times and locations. He also had the traps memorized. He could even use the traps against the monsters, eliminating them effectively. Regarding the maze itself, he believed that memorizing it was the best solution. Although this method would make players of Hero's Path scream, but he had tried enough times and memorized everything. Yu Baekjun looked down at the treasure chest before him. While wandering through the labyrinth, his hands were already full of the treasures he had found. He didn't look like someone challenging a difficult labyrinth. He looked more like a commoner, thinking about eating his fill before leaving. Then he opened the chest to claim his reward. Inside the large chest was something that looked like an ordinary bag. He knew this was also an item, one that could hold up to 10 items, as long as they didn't exceed a certain weight. The Treasure Guardian's belt. Inside it was 1,000-year snow ginseng. This type of ginseng grows where snow falls, in extremely remote areas where plants cannot survive. It could greatly enhance magical power and had other effects. The aroma made Ru Bek's mouth water. He desperately wanted to devour it right then, but he knew it wasn't an ordinary medicinal herb. Consuming it unprepared would mean certain death. Regretfully, he decided to take it back to his clan. He would consume it after taking the necessary precautions. He placed the snow ginseng back in the pouch. Then the long-awaited message appeared. It stated that all the treasures in the labyrinth had been found. Mission complete. As a reward, he received 500 gold and the Black Devil robe. Suddenly, from the void, a pitch-black robe floated down. Yu Baek caught it and stored it away. With this notification, it meant the Martial God's tomb would soon complete its purpose and close. Yu Baek needed to return to the surface. That is, back to that extremely cold place. Yu Baek smiled confidently. He believed he wouldn't feel the cold anymore. His figure was enveloped in a golden light. Moments later, he vanished from the labyrinth. Somewhere in the snowy mountains of Snow Moon Mountain, there was a small outpost. The wind rattled the window panes violently. Inside, a man's humming could be heard. This burly, short-haired man was a trainee from the Sword Saint family. He felt cold. He thought ramen would taste best on a day like this. He reminisced about his time in the army. The higher up Snow Moon Mountain you went, the more monsters there were. He had been sent to monitor the monsters for any unusual activity. Thinking that he would be relieved of duty tomorrow, he decided to endure just one more day. He smiled as he lifted the lid of the pot, planning to fill his stomach first. Just then, there was a loud bang. A sound like a fist smashing against the guard post window startled him. The man instantly tightened his grip on his sword, suspecting a monster. He quickly signaled the other guard posts. He then took position at the entrance of the guard post. He could sense something outside. Assuming it was a monster, he planned to strike first to gain the upper hand. Suddenly, the door burst open. The man was knocked to the ground, the door slamming into his face. He sprawled on the floor. He quickly scrambled up, gripping his sword tightly. He prepared to attack the intruder, but lowered his weapon before striking. He recognized the newcomer as Liu Baijun. Liu Baijun, I had a dream. I dreamt I was a character in a game, fighting for survival. The dream felt incredibly real. I heard voices, discussing how Baek-jun Ryu had been asleep for 4 days. Another voice replied that someone was losing patience. They said Baek-jun's condition wasn't due to an injury. The first voice asked, if not an injury, then what was the cause? Their chatter was happening right above Baek-jun, their incessant chirping irritating him. Baek-jun tried to ignore them and go back to sleep, pulling the blanket tighter around himself, but the comfort of the blanket felt different, unlike the worn-out one in his small apartment. This made him suddenly open his eyes. Then Baek-jun heard someone say that the body needs time to adjust to changes. Though he didn't know what had happened, but his physique had undergone a significant change. Ryu Baek-jun saw his attendant Choi Sung-min by his bedside. There was also another person playing a game nearby. It was an elderly man, a familiar yet unfamiliar face. The old man and Ryu Baek-jun made eye contact. The old man told him he was awake. Choi Sung-min cried out, "Young master!" Ryu Baek-jun blinked. He pushed away Choi Sung-min, who had rushed over in surprise. He asked the old man if he had logged into Close Hero Road. The old man was confused by Ryu Baek-jun's mention of his grandfather and Hero Road. His eyes widened. Ryu Baek-jun stared blankly at the old man's face. The old man laughed heartily. He said the medicine must have made Ryu Baek-jun's mind foggy. He told him to clear his head. He paused when he was about to say young master. Choi Sung-min addressed the pharmacist as Ju Young-won. They asked Baek-jun Ryu if he was all right. They suspected he might have hit his head. Jong Won-ju replied that he seemed fine. Baek-jun ignored their conversation and began to look around. He saw a wooden room. The ceiling, the walls, and the floor were all made of wood. It resembled a room in a traditional Korean house. The furniture was wooden with a polished surface, giving it a luxurious feel. The wide-open windows were covered with paper screens, letting in sunlight and the sound of birdsong. Baek-jun looked out the window and saw a sprawling estate. Within the vast space were dozens of time-worn, elegant hanok houses. In one area, trainees were sweating profusely as they trained, chanting slogans. In another, fully equipped hunters were getting ready to head out and seal a B rank gate that appeared on the west side. We need to take care of it before it moves beyond the mountains. Jo Jong-won informed Ryu Baek-jun quietly. This is the Sword Saint family's Choi residence. It's where he lives. He then offered a warm smile, checked Ryu Baek-jun's wounds once more, and nodded. When Ryu Baek-jun heard sword, it ain't family. He felt the fog in his mind slowly lift. He shook his head forcefully. He shook his head vigorously. Ju Jong-won said Ryu Baek-jun's wounds were fine, but he seemed disoriented. He asked him if he was all right. Ryu Baek-jun replied that his head hurt. Ju Jong-won said he needed to change Ryu Baek-jun's medication and would be down in a moment. He called Choi Sung-min over, saying Ryu Baek-jun must be hungry and needed food. Choi Sung-min replied, right away. Baek-jun stopped Ju Young-won as he was about to leave. He asked him what day it was. Young-won replied, January 15th. Baek-jun then asked what year it was. Jung-won told him it was 2035. He then left with Choi Sung-myung. Baek-jun watched them go. Suddenly, a notification window popped up. It displayed, Mission Come Catch Me completed. Reward, 100 farts. Baek-jun stared blankly at the notification for a moment. He chuckled wryly, thinking this couldn't possibly be a dream. Baekjun breathed a sigh of relief. He thought to himself that he had safely returned to his family for now. Baekjun decided to first use the knowledge in his mind to understand the current situation, because only by understanding the situation could he plan his next move. While eating, Baekjun learned that he was in an annex building of the Kunseong family. He had returned to his family as he wished, but this was a stage for power struggles, no safer than the snowy plains. He believed that the children of prestigious families in their quest to take over were bound to clash. The Sword Saint family had existed since the Xian dynasty, a prestigious clan passed down through generations. They constantly trained disciples, honing their skills until they entered society and became exceptional hunters or high-ranking officials. This, in turn, strengthened the family's influence. To seize control and its benefits, the family's heirs and siblings were engaged in a fierce power struggle. Among them were the eldest son, Ryutaro, and the eldest daughter, Ryu Makoto. The third son, Yu Kang-ho. The fourth, a daughter, Yu Min, and the youngest, Yu Baekjun himself. There were originally 3 more, but they all died at the hands of Yu Tairo. Baekjun felt that, strictly speaking, rather than a full-blown struggle, the process was nearing its end. Kang-ho had sided with Tairo. Yu Jin-aeon had more or less given up on the heir's position. Yu Min had never been interested in the first place. In reality, the heir's position was practically guaranteed to be Tairo's. Barring any major upsets, he would become the head of the family. Baekjun glanced at the clock. It was 2035. Nothing had changed. He calculated that Tairo would likely become the head of the family in about 2 years. This was precisely the year the game's various storylines began, January 15th, meaning about a week had passed since the Ryubak gun incident started. He also considered that his father would likely retire in about 2 years, and Ryu Tairo would succeed him as the family head. Chairman Ryu Mu-hyuk would retire within the next 2 years, and the one who would disappear and take his place as head of the family would be the family's eldest son, Ryu Tairo. It was Ryu Tairo who ordered Shin Woo-hyun to kill him, Ryu Baekjun thought. If he lived until Ryu Tairo became the head of the family, Ryu Tairo would kill him soon after. It would be an assassination disguised as an accidental death. He would probably say he was doing it to prevent any future disputes. Something like, the inheritance dispute ends here. But then he thought, actually, the possibility of him dying before Ryu Tairo became the head of the family might be even higher. Because throughout the entire journey, Ryu Tairo had repeatedly tried to assassinate him and his other siblings. The reason stemmed from Ryu Tairang's paranoid nature. He hated leaving any potential threats alive. Ryu Baekjun learned that Ryu Tairo, under their father's orders, had gone to deal with a portal that appeared on Mount Snow Moon. He would return in 2 months. Before then, Baekjun had to accumulate strength. He felt fortunate that his Sword Saint family valued strength above all else. As long as he could cultivate his power, he could gain recognition within the family. This was why he didn't hesitate to risk his life, enduring hardships to visit the ancient tomb of the martial god. With his heavenly martial body and the martial god's book, he could obtain the power necessary to seize control of the family. And there were many excellent teachers here as well. The hero's journey is filled with moments of satisfaction, events triggered by specific conditions, conditions he knew like the back of his hand. Someone capable of instantly triggering an event was Elder Ju Jungwon and Yu Baekjun. Thinking back to Ju Jungwon, he was the first instructor he wanted to recruit, a brilliant pharmacist from the Sword Saint family. Ju Jungwon joined the family during the previous Jeju's reign. He had served the family faithfully ever since. His medical skills were exceptional. He possessed unique abilities related to healing. His healing methods were remarkably effective, and he had no interest in the Sword Saint family's power struggles. He was only interested in herbs and pharmaceuticals. He was also a good person. He would be helpful. Yu Baekjun planned to become Ju Youngwon's disciple. To learn pharmaceutical skills, after mastering them, he would create an antidote to control the blood ginseng side effects. He would then consume the blood ginseng. To gain immense magical power, he decided to build up his strength first. His first step after returning to his family was to create a potion to enhance his power. For about 2 days, Liu Baijun frequented Ju Jungwon's pharmacy. He showed off his knowledge to Ju Jungyuan. Ju Jungyuan pointed to a herb and asked Liu Baijun to identify it. Liu Baijun answered that it was balaji grass. He said it contained a paralyzing poison. If consumed, it would quickly paralyze and render someone unconscious. Ultimately, It would cause death by asphyxiation. Zhu Zhengyuan confirmed Liu Baijun's answer. Liu Baijun continued, explaining that if balaji grass was blanched, dried, and then mixed with vitality grass in a potion, perhaps it can invigorate someone. Zhu Zhengyuan again remarked on how knowledgeable Liu Baijun was about hidden treasures. Afterward, for each herb Zhu Zhengyuan inquired about, Liu Baijun provided a detailed explanation of its effects. Unbeknownst to him, at some point, Zhu Zhengyuan began testing Liu Baijun's knowledge. First, he had him select the medicinal herbs and the poisonous ones from a collection. Then he asked him to choose only the necessary ingredients to create a wound-healing potion. After Liu Baijun indicated his understanding, Zhu Zhengyuan asked him to consider which medicine to prescribe, based on a patient-specific condition. Liu Baijun responded that he would do so. The results of these tests were obvious. Zhu Zhengyuan stared wide-eyed at Liu Baijun, marveling at his flawless performance. He recognized that Liu Baijun possessed sufficient knowledge to accurately distinguish between medicinal and poisonous herbs, and even knew how to handle poisons, the method to remove the toxicity and transform it into medicinal herbs, and the precise knowledge of which herbs to combine. My friend, means you have a deep understanding of each herb's properties. He was utterly astonished. Zhu Zhengyuan asked Ryu Baekjun, "Where did you learn all of this?" Ryu Baekjun thought to himself, "I learned it because I struggled through it thousands of times in the game. Even though I hated it, I memorized all this." He replied, "I learned it from a book." Hearing this, Zhu Zhengyuan expressed his disbelief. From a book? Ryu Baekjun understood. After all, this was a game. Unlike reality, which required professional pharmaceutical knowledge, here you only needed to know the herbal combinations, the recipes, and their effects. Zhu Zhengyuan then asked Ryu Baekjun, "Do you know why you were doing those test-like movements?" Liu Baijun replied that he wasn't quite sure. Zhu Zhengyuan explained that he was personally testing him to see if imparting his knowledge to Liu Baijun would be suitable. Upon hearing imparting knowledge, Liu Baijun responded without hesitation. Zhu Zhengyuan nodded and said, "Although I said I would teach you, Liu Baijun, I initially only planned to teach you the basics. But now I've changed my mind. I want to teach you everything I know. However, on the condition that you become my disciple." "Are you willing?" he asked Liu Baijun. Zhu Zhengyuan, having searched for so long, now had the perfect disciple candidate right before him. He was practically bursting with anticipation. "Tisk!" Liu Baijun feigned hesitation for a moment, making Zhu Zhengyuan anxious. Then he replied, "It would be my honor," and addressed Zhu Zhengyuan as master. Zhu Zhengyuan acknowledged him with a sound. While receiving Zhu Zhengyuan's instruction, Ryu Baekjun began to train his body. Choi Sung-min, upon seeing this, exclaimed in surprise, "Young master!" "You're exercising?" Ryu Baekjun confirmed that he was indeed exercising, and told Choi Sung-min to stay in the residence. Choi Sung-min agreed repeatedly, but couldn't hide his confusion. As Ryu Baekjun's attendant, this was the first time Choi Sung-min had seen Ryu Baekjun declare that he wanted to train himself. Ryu Baekjun was doing this because the Book of the Martial God had given him the first task to escape his bamboo stick physique. The task stated that Ryu Baekjun's current body was too weak, and if he continued like this, even having a heavenly martial body would be a waste. It required him to train for at least 6 hours today. Complete this to receive a 50p reward and a strength boost. Baekjun looked down at his body, clad in a loose-fitting training uniform. He was surprised that even the smallest size looked baggy on him. He realized just how thin he was, and couldn't help but sigh. How did he get this way? Part of it was his dislike of exercise, but more importantly, the immense pressure he endured from his family life. Baekjun casually glanced around the outdoor training grounds. Many other clan members were training there, and they kept sneaking glances at him. One wondered aloud, "What's that guy doing on the training grounds?" Another guessed, "Is he planning to read out here?" calling him a bookworm. Yet another scoffed. "A member of the Sword Saint clan? Tossing aside his sword to be a bookworm?" He added, "He should be at the Magic Tower." Even if Baijun was only training, the family's students held a particular dislike for him. Fortunately, no one was crazy enough to directly confront him. They only whispered about him behind his back. Baijun grinned, thinking that from now on, the story would change. He knew how to become stronger. He just needed to stick to his plan and work hard until Taru returned. As Baijun ran, lost in thought, he used body-strengthening techniques and started to sprint across the training ground. He knew this was a way to kill two birds with one stone, increasing both his magic power and stamina. He planned to complete one task today, and another tomorrow. That way, he would accumulate 700 points. Baijun thought that after completing a series of tasks, he should be able to learn the skill he'd been longing for. So he continued for 6 hours straight, doing cardio and strength training. When he was drenched in sweat and felt like he couldn't run anymore, the system notified him that the task was complete. As a reward, he received 50p and a boost to his strength. Liu Baijun collapsed on the ground, feeling nauseous and like he was going to vomit. He opened his status window to check the results of his 6-hour workout. He found that his strength had increased by 5 points, his endurance by 7, and his agility by about 6. His proficiency in spirit techniques had also increased by 1 level. He couldn't help but sigh. The heavenly martial physique allowed for an extraordinary rate of attribute growth. Liu Baijun caught his breath. Just as he was about to start training again, the surrounding people began to whisper amongst themselves. Someone wondered what the smell was. Then Baekhyun heard a familiar voice. After sighing softly to himself, he turned and saw his well-built older brother, with his dyed brown hair, who gave off a comforting aura. It was Kangho, the third son of the family. Kangho said he was wondering where the stench was coming from, and it turned out to be his younger brother's doing. Baekhyun greeted Kangho, saying it had been a while. Kangho replied, "Baekhyun's always cooped up in his room. That's why it's been so long." He then looked back for agreement from the instructors who were following him, and they burst into laughter. Baekhyun thought to himself that he had expected this, knowing clearly that in his own storyline, Kangho was like a pre-game villain. He was known as the black sheep of the family, a lavish spender with a messy history with women. Every time he entered a social setting, he would cause all sorts of trouble, and he intensely disliked himself. This stemmed from an incident where Yu Baekjun had rescued a maid who was being harassed by Yu Kangho. The game only briefly mentioned it, but it did happen. Yu Kangho felt humiliated and started bullying Yu Baekjun. Yu Baekjun thought Yu Kangho was twisted. Yu Kangho asked Yu Baekjun what he had just said. Yu Baekjun replied that he hadn't said anything. Yu Kangho watched as a sneer slowly spread across Yu Baekjun's lips. He smirked, mocking Yu Baekjun that even with training, he would still be a cripple. A complete waste of time. Baekjun thought to himself, if he were his usual self, he wouldn't passively accept such a provocation. He would have already charged in, but it wasn't the right time for a direct confrontation with Kangho. He still needed a little more time, so he decided to endure it for now with a forced smile. Kangho, with a hearty laugh, said that if Baekjun ever needed help, he would personally assist him, just like old times. Busy, then left. Baekjun Ryu watched the servants, trailing behind Kangho Ryu, and sighed softly. He had a feeling Kangho was going to have a rough time, although this thought made him feel like a despicable villain. He was indeed planning to make it happen. Baekjun stood up, thinking that his body had cooled down, and he should go back, take a shower, and rest. But then he received a new mission notification, stating, "Muscles grow through training that constantly pushes limits." It encouraged him to train for another 3 hours. Completion will reward 50p and stat boosts. Baekjun grumbled, "Stop giving me missions!" He had planned to rest, but there was nothing he could do. She could only fight back tears as she started running on the training grounds again. While undergoing her personal training, Liu Baijun also went to Zhu Zhengyuan's pharmacy to study. 4 days passed like this. The system prompted, after receiving teachings from the outstanding pharmacist, Zhu Zhengyuan, the pharmacy skill has been generated. And due to inheriting Zhu Zhengyuan's knowledge, the effects of the pharmacy skill were further enhanced. Liu Baijun saw the anticipated pharmacy skill B rank. Description: using expertise in herbal preparation, ingredients can be mixed to create herbal medicine. Herbal medicine crafted with this skill have effects 1.5 times stronger than normal. Also, due to inheriting exceptional knowledge, the created herbal medicines have additional effects. She smiled with satisfaction. Having reached this point, Liu Baijun no longer hesitated. Late that night, he used a secret passage known only to him to infiltrate the family treasure vault. Even the family heir couldn't enter freely. Liu Baijun retrieved several essential medicinal herbs, each as potent as a magical elixir, before slipping back out. He felt that these should be enough. He also knew that the vault guardian would likely scold him severely for his actions. The next day, Liu Baijun went to the pharmacy and laid out the herbs before Zhu Zhengyuan. Astonished, Zhu Zhengyuan asked what they were. He recognized the Sunfire Spirit grass. He gasped when he saw the fire ginseng. He noted that although it wasn't as ancient as 1,000-year snow ginseng, it was likely several decades old and still incredibly valuable. He then asked Liu Baijun where he got the fire ginseng and what he planned to do with these herbs. Baijun replied that he intended to make a pill that maximizes yang energy to counteract the poison. He asked Zhu Zhengyuan for help. Zhu Zhengyuan agreed to help, but asked where Liu Baijun planned to use it once it was made. Liu Baijun pulled 1,000-year-old snow ginseng from his pocket. Zhu Zhengyuan's eyes widened in surprise. 1,000-year-old snow ginseng, he exclaimed. Liu Baijun explained that he needed the pill to digest the ginseng. Zhu Zhengyuan marveled at seeing such a rare treasure. He mentioned Liu Baijun's earlier claim of being attacked by a monster, and realized he'd actually been off getting the snow ginseng. Liu Baijun replied, something like that. He then asked if Zhu Zhengyuan would still help him. He then grinned widely. Zhu Zhengyuan saw that Liu Baijun seemed determined, and clicking his tongue, he stopped his initial refusal to help. He said he couldn't refuse Liu Baijun's plea. The two then began making the antidote pill together. Their movements were slow and careful. After dozens of preparatory steps, combine the sunflower, fire spirit grass, and fire ginseng. Utilize pharmaceutical skills during the process. The assistance of Zhu Jiangwan, possessing outstanding pharmaceutical skills, is required. The effects of the pharmaceutical skills are further enhanced. Finally, the auspicious pill is successfully crafted. Ryu Baekgun examines the completed A-grade Liang pill and learns that it's an antidote, created with exceptional pharmaceutical skills. It contains potent yang energy. Unlike the 1,000-year blood ginseng, when taken together with blood ginseng, it allows the yin and yang energies to suppress each other appropriately. Ryu Baekgun then asks Zhu Jiangwan to be left alone for a while. Zhu Jiangwan asks if he can process this on his own. Ryu Baekgun confirms that he can. Zhu Jiangwan says that if he senses any danger, he will immediately bring people in. Liu Baijun reviewed the 3 disasters awakening technique several times. Although he had just learned it, he already knew how to use it. After all, he'd used it thousands of times while playing the game. He decided to give it a try and tossed the auspicious pill into his mouth. It felt like scorching sunlight sliding down his throat from his mouth. Once the pill settled in his core, he consumed the 1,000-year snow ginseng. Next, he swallowed the extreme yang pill. His body felt so hot it was like he would melt at any moment. But now he felt so cold, he thought he would freeze. It was like dry ice flowing down his throat, the sensations spreading throughout his body. Cold, intense energy radiated outwards. Liu Baijun knew this conflicting energy could be fatal. The 1,000-year snow ginseng was filled with yin energy. Without the right cultivation technique and assistance, others couldn't absorb it. And he lacked precisely those requirements. So, the production is immediate and potent. He'll suppress the yin energy with yang energy. He's done this hundreds of times before. He's confident there won't be any mistakes. Liu Baijun calmly guides and controls the energy entering his body. His body temperature rises and falls repeatedly. Countless times he's drenched in sweat. Cold sweat soaks him. While circulating his cultivation technique, he finally tastes the fruits of his labor. He abruptly opens his eyes. Within his pupils, a misty azure energy flows out. System prompt: successfully absorb the 1,000-year snow ginseng. Using the extreme yang pill's effects to suppress the snow ginseng's yin energy, he absorbs its pure magical power. Magic power level increased by 2 ranks, and due to the pill's effects, all attributes and skill proficiencies have increased. His speed accelerated for a short period. Seeing the anticipated notification, a joyful expression appeared on Yu Baekjun's face. Although the process had been repeated countless times, success still brought him joy. He immediately opened his status window. He saw his own strength, agility, stamina, and magic power attributes, as well as his unique abilities, traits, and mastered skills. At this moment, he could feel a powerful magic flowing. His body felt invigorated. The yin and yang energies stabilized within his dantian. Baekjun let out a long sigh. He thought to himself, first, I need to raise my magic power to B rank. There was a reason for this. Yu Baekjun opened the Book of Martial God once again. He saw that he had 500 points remaining. Various skills that could be learned with these points came into view. Without hesitation, he chose the attribute Giganta skill. Along with a 1-star skill, this skill was created by the magic swordsman Yun Songhua. It's used to infuse excess magic power into a sword. It combines magic power with attribute magic power. and releases it as a forceful aura. It's a genuine A-rank skill, yet it only cost 500p. Yu Baekjun understood that this was because of its immense magic consumption. He clenched his fist tightly and used the attribute gigant, ice skill. Attribute magic power gathered around his fist, forming a visible steel-like aura. Then, shouting, "Ha!" he slammed his fist into the wall. The steel-like aura around his hand shattered, scattering icy fragments everywhere. The surface of the impacted wall was coated in a layer of ice. The skill's power was clearly outstanding, but its magic consumption was also incredibly high. Use it once, and it instantly consumes nearly half of your internal magic and attribute magic. Yu Baekjun thought to himself. Only someone like Yun Song-ha would use this. Yun Song-ha, a prominent figure from Heroes Road, was a remarkable and highly skilled hunter, with a unique ability called Dragon Heart. His special heart generated magic at an astonishing rate, allowing him to utilize this inefficient technique to release excess magic power. Baekjun had learned this skill from the Book of the Martial God and knew that the book assigned points based on a skill's value. High-level skills earned more points, while drawbacks resulted in deductions. The Book of the Martial God had deemed the giant crab attribute skill to have numerous flaws. Its range was reduced to 500 pil. Yu Baekjun thought, with this book you could practically learn any skill. Every named character in the game, even the skills used by both enemies, could be learned. Thinking about Yunsong, he guessed he was probably in the US. It would be interesting if they could meet someday, he thought. Yu Baekjun believed that in the current situation, the giant crab attribute was a skill he could effectively utilize. He let out a long breath. He felt that all preparations were complete. It was time to initiate the main event. He knew tomorrow was Sunday. His father's last chance, the one he had been waiting for, would occur on this day. The next day, Yu Baekjun woke up early. He recalled Choi Sung-min seeming to have been waiting after ringing the bell. Yawning, he entered the room. Choi Sung-min told Yu Baekjun that he had been waking up early lately. He hadn't been able to sleep well. Yu Baekjun asked, "Is there any family event this morning?" Scratching his head, Choi Sung-min replied that it was Sunday. Family members would be attending a training observation. He added that he'd been asked previously if Yu Baekjun would be going. He'd said no, because ever since Baekjun was young, he had never participated in such events. Baekjun declared that he would be going. Sung-min, caught off guard by this unexpected answer, asked in astonishment. Baekjun countered with his own question. Wasn't it natural for him to attend as a blood relative of the family? What was so surprising? Sung-min explained that after seeing it once as a child, Baekjun had declared he disliked it and never went again. Back then, the head of the family was furious. Baekjun scoffed dismissively and told Sung-min to shut up. News of his attendance and asked if the event was starting in about an hour. The event was about to begin. After receiving confirmation, Choi Sung-min left, his face full of confusion. Yu Baekjun hurriedly got up. He sighed, thinking, having only Choi Sung-min as an attendant is truly inconvenient. Usually family heirs have mentor-like secretaries by their side. But I'm the ostracized child of the family, he lamented. That's why I only have Choi Sung-min and no one cares about me. News about me never gets out. I'm a homebody. I rarely go out. I was bedridden for days after being attacked by a monster, and no one came to visit. He scoffed, believing they could no longer ignore him. It was time to make his mark on the family. Students of the Sword Saint family gathered every morning for group training. Family members were expected to watch. It's a custom passed down from long ago. Liu Baijun wasn't interested in martial arts. He hadn't watched a match since he was a child. But today was different. At the training grounds where students practiced together, everyone was surprised to see Liu Baijun. They whispered amongst themselves, wondering if it was really him. They speculated about what he was doing there. Some mocked him, a man with no martial arts skills, for putting on airs. They pointed out he'd never participated in training, so why had he suddenly shown up? In the viewing stands of the training grounds, family members gathered weekly to observe the students' progress. Liu Baijun's presence was a surprise to everyone. Everyone in the stands looked at him with puzzled expressions. Just then, the training began. Someone shouted, "Training commences!" "Skybreaker Swordsman number 1, the students chanted in response. Liu Baekjun calmly looked around. In the most honored seat in the stands, he saw a middle-aged man with a commanding presence. He had long, pure white hair, and beneath his robe, his body was pure muscle. Baekjun recognized him as his father. Ryu Mu-hyuk, the head of the Sword Saint family. He was the current patriarch. and would hand over leadership to Ryutaro in 2 years. Then he would retire. After retirement, his whereabouts would be unknown. Baekhyun felt that every time he saw his father, his aura was formidable. He exuded an extraordinary charisma just by sitting still. He could make those around him feel pressured. This pressure was even stronger than what he felt in the game. At that moment, a woman with long black hair, the woman who appeared gentle but harbored a dark heart, was observing Ryu Baekjun. It was Yu Baekjun. She approached him, asking if he was all right after the monster attack. Baekjun replied, acknowledging her nickname, Silent Sister. He said he had recovered thanks to Ju Young-won's crucial help. The woman expressed her relief at hearing of his recovery. She was glad. Baekjun agreed, saying he was indeed fortunate. Nearby, beside Yu Jongyeon, the eldest daughter of the Sword Saint family, stood Yu Kang-ho, who had a frivolous air about him. He scoffed disdainfully. He said the bloodline of the Sword Saint family had been attacked by a monster and nearly lost their life. He called it a foolish disaster. Jongyeon replied that it could happen to anyone, but Kang-ho retorted, saying having a family member like Baekjun was an embarrassment. Baekjun recognized the speaker. It was the same person he had met before. The ill-tempered third son of the Sword Saint family, Yu Kang-ho, sat quietly in the furthest corner, petite and with short black hair. The fourth daughter of the Sword Saint family, Yu Min, was also there. Baekjun thought to himself. This scene is exactly like the one from the game. He had been worried that there might be some unexpected additions, but it seemed nothing had particularly changed. Kang-ho approached Baekjun, mentioning that he'd heard Baekjun had been frequenting the apothecary lately. Baekjun confirmed it, saying there was much he needed to learn. Kang-ho scoffed, mocking Baekjun's lack of talent with the sword, implying that his newfound interest in medicinal herbs meant he was settling for a less demanding profession. He taunted Baekjun, who spent all his time cooped up reading. By bringing up the time Baekjun, in his weakness, had been badly beaten by a monster, he asked if Baekjun remembered. In his offer to teach him swordsmanship, Baekjun recalled a scene from the game. Kang-ho had lured him to the training grounds under the pretense of a sparring session. But in reality, Kang-ho had beaten him half to death. That incident had deepened Baekjun's aversion to swordsmanship. He confirmed to Kang-ho that he had indeed said those words. Kang-ho responded with a low growl, ordering Baekjun to follow him. He claimed he would teach him swordsmanship. Baekjun casually glanced around, noticing his siblings arguing without any intervention. He wondered if it was time to fight back. With a deep sigh, he told Kang-ho he was being too loud. He told him to shut up. Kang-ho looked stunned. Silence fell over the surroundings. Kang-ho, who had been ranting moments before, was speechless. Everyone stared at Baekjun in astonishment. Baekjun continued addressing Kang-ho. She told him to turn his head. She also commented that the smell of cigarettes and coffee on him, his strong body odor, was unpleasant. She even questioned if he had stomach problems. Kang-ho tried to say something, but Baekjun ignored him. She stood up from her seat and walked towards the main seat in the stands where Moo Hyuk was sitting. At first, Moo Hyuk didn't look at Baekjun. Baekjun smiled and knelt down on one knee in front of him, indicating that she had something to say. Only then did Moo Hyuk's gaze turn towards Baekjun. His eyes were vacant and lifeless, reflecting nothing. Their gazes met in midair. Baekjun expressed her desire to learn martial arts from Moo Hyuk. A flicker of light flashed in Moo Hyuk's empty eyes. The final taboo incident of her father began to unfold. Silence fell over the audience. Kang-ho was stunned. Jing Yeon watched Minjun with amusement, remaining silent. The other trainees, who had been occasionally glancing over during their training, were also dumbfounded. The instructors were no different. Only silence hung in the air between Baekjun and Moo Hyuk. Moo Hyuk stared intently at Baekjun, the silence spreading. He boomed Baekjun's name, his voice full of authority. He demanded to know what Baekjun was doing there. This wasn't a place, he declared, for someone with neither talent nor interest in martial arts. Baekjun met Moo Hyuk's emotionless gaze, as if Moo Hyuk had just realized he was there. After a cold chuckle, Baekjun said he'd suddenly developed an interest in martial arts. Moo Hyuk expressed his doubt. He pointed out that since childhood, Baekjun, I refused to learn martial arts. and I hate learning how to kill. Baekjun tilted his head slightly, admitting he once felt that way. But after nearly being killed by a monster, his perspective changed. Mu-hyuk gestured for Baekjun to come closer. Baekjun rose from his spot and knelt before him. Mu-hyuk asked Baekjun to repeat himself, to confirm if his feelings had truly changed. Baekjun explained that when he almost died, he stopped caring if it was about killing. He'd thrown those old thoughts out the window. Mu-hyuk continued to question him. Baekjun grinned at him, declaring his desire to learn from one of the 4 great masters, to learn martial arts. Suddenly it wasn't Mu-hyuk, but Kang-ho who leaped from his seat. He erupted in a furious outburst. He said that for someone like Ryu Baekjun, to want to learn martial arts from a grand master was absurd. So laughable, even a passing dog would scoff. He scoffed again, repeating, "Learn martial arts, seriously?" Yu Mu-hyuk chuckled softly, his face betraying no emotion. His gaze scanned Ryu Baekjun's entire body. Although Ryu Baekjun's physique had improved due to the medicinal pills, he was still quite frail. Yu Mu-hyuk looked at that body, a flicker of light momentarily flashing in his eyes. He thought it was pathetic. Yet something had changed. From a body completely devoid of talent, a faint glimmer of aptitude had emerged. Yu Mu-hyuk questioned with Ryu Baekjun like this. Did he still want to learn martial arts? Ryu Baekjun answered with a firm yes. Yu Mu-hyuk clicked his tongue and shook his head, saying Ryu Baekjun's talent was far too insignificant. Teaching him was pointless, let alone having a grandmaster teach him. Liu Baijun countered, "What if it isn't?" Liu Wuhei responded with a puzzled look. Liu Baijun had anticipated Liu Wuhei's reaction. He maintained a calm smile. With newfound confidence in his voice, he declared he would prove he possessed the talent, worthy of a grandmaster's instruction. Liu Wuxi asked how. Liu Baijun told him to wait and see. Then he pointed to the side, at Liu Kanghao, who was looking at him with disgust. He announced that in 1 week, exactly 1 week, he would spar with Liu Kanghao, and he would win. Liu Kanghao burst into hollow laughter. He felt utterly ridiculous in Liu Baijun's eyes. He couldn't believe he was hearing this from someone who had never trained in martial arts. Baekgun didn't look at Kang-ho. Instead, he asked for Mu-hyuk's opinion. Mu-hyuk also didn't look at Kang-ho. The 2 men locked eyes. After a long moment of scrutiny, Mu-hyuk agreed to let Baekgun try. He emphasized that this was his last chance. Failure would mean being stripped of his family's serum status. He told him to prepare himself. Baekgun lowered his head and said he understood. He would remember. He smiled secretly. Time limit was 1 week. If Baekgun defeated Kang-ho, he would be able to learn martial arts from the 4 grandmasters residing within the founding family. This could be considered the reward for this task. Baekgun saw this as a chance to learn skills for free, an opportunity he couldn't miss. He had just sensed that Mu-hyuk. He was examining his own body. He understood that Liu Wu-hyuk wasn't just looking, but had inspected his physique and bone structure. Since his attributes had increased from F rank to C rank, Liu Wu-hyuk must have noticed the change. This was the minimum requirement to trigger a sparring event. In addition, there was the heavenly martial body and abundant magic power. If these conditions weren't met, Liu Wu-hyuk would directly refuse the sparring request. Yu Baekjun thought that while his older brother was away, he needed to solidify his position as much as possible. Looking at the training ground before him, outwardly old, but filled with brand new Bakema training equipment, he activated a device. The device absorbed magic power and generated a blue humanoid figure a short distance away. It was a training dummy made of magic power. This training dummy could move. Although its abilities were limited, it could attack. He could use it to improve his proficiency and attributes. Compared to fighting real people, the improvement rate was slower. However, Yu Baekjun was currently in a boosted state. He was determined to raise his attributes and skills by at least 1 level. He figured he wouldn't be sleeping for a while. Although it was high-intensity training, he was more confident in enduring it than anyone else. Yu Baekjun began his training. At first, the trainees who watched all curled their lips in mockery. Some were surprised to see the frail Yu Baekjun training. Some mentioned how he had run away crying when Yu Kang-ho tried to train him before. Others wondered how long he could last this time. Everyone couldn't help but sneer. This was partly because Yu Baekjun had a terrible reputation within the family. He was seen as gentle but indecisive, unsuitable for leading the family. The weak, lacking innate martial arts talent are a disgrace to the family. They can never become the head of the family. On the other hand, Ryu Baekjun wasn't a bad person. Though born into the prestigious Sword Saint family with a high status from birth, he was kind to others. He was far from a delinquent. But this was the Sword Saint family. ruled by the logic of power, and where martial arts were revered. Born lacking in martial arts talent, he became an object of scorn. Ryu Baekjun trained all day long, continuously practicing the green body technique until he was drenched in sweat. He relentlessly unleashed a barrage of three-strike fist techniques and other skills on a magic straw dummy. Everyone thought he wouldn't last long. Most instructors shared the same opinion. However, a few instructors disagreed. Instructor Han Chang-ah was one of them. She wasn't initially interested in the family heir, but watching Ryu Baekjun's boxing, her attention was captivated. She found Ryu Baekjun's movements incredibly impressive. She especially noticed how he executed the shoulder-carrying boxing technique. Despite some shortcomings due to the limitations of the martial art itself, his movements possessed a strange maturity. His posture was firm, each move stable and controlled. Seeing Ryu Baekjun utilize light body technique to move around all day, Han Chang-ah was greatly surprised. She wondered how much magic power he possessed to be able to do so. While other instructors overlooked Ryu Baekjun due to their biases, Han Chang-ah accurately recognized his progress. As time passed, he was growing. Even if onlookers, he could feel his muscles growing stronger each day. His endurance was increasing day by day. Such a change in just 3 days of training. Han Chang-ya couldn't help but wonder if it was even possible. When someone asked him about it, he brushed it off, saying it was nothing. But inwardly he sighed. People always said that Ryu Baekjun lacked talent. He himself had once believed it. But now, looking at Ryu Baekjun, a thought suddenly struck him. The exceptional physique of Yu Mu-hyuk, the childless 5 vice-captain. Perhaps it had been passed down to Ryu Baekjun, although Ryu Baekjun might have always rejected it. He wondered why Ryu Baekjun was using his full strength. After observing Ryu Baekjun for a long time, Han Cheng-ya cautiously approached him. Ryu Baekjun's training wasn't complicated. He would run across the entire training ground using light footwork, then practice his punches on the magic straw dummies. Unlike the other trainees, he spent the entire day doing this. Even after training all day long, he showed no signs of fatigue. His posture remained perfectly aligned. After running for hours on the training grounds, his form was still impeccably impressive. The training yielded excellent results. Due to exceeding his limits, his strength and endurance each increased by 1 point. Thanks to the effects of the elixir, his endurance and magic power each received an additional 1-point boost. He gained insight into the Qing parameter. Qing parameter proficiency increased by 1 level. First-rate training results achieved. Without taking a break, Liu Baijun began practicing 3-fist techniques and using focus strike to pummel the magic straw dummy. Once again, due to exceeding his training limits, his strength, endurance, and agility each increased by 2 points. Due to the effects of the solo training, his stamina and agility each increased by 1 point. He gained insight through the training. The proficiency of all 3 calamities and force strike each increased by 1 level. Due to the cumulative effect of the heavenly martial body pill, his stats were increasing at an alarming rate. This wasn't the first or second time he'd undergone this kind of training. Through relentless practice, when it came to improving stats or skill proficiency, he was more confident than anyone. Baekjun Ryu grinned. Just as he was about to start training again, someone asked him if he was all right. Baeyun turned his head. He saw a tall, athletic, elegant woman with short black hair. It was Song Ah-han. Baekjun realized that the events related to Seong Ah-han were beginning. One of the reasons he purposely trained in the crowded training ground was because he was waiting. Now, Liu Baijun wiped away the constantly dripping sweat and looked around. He noticed that the originally focused and chattering onlookers were all gone. He guessed it was because everyone had gone to rest in the early morning hours. Checking the time, he realized that was indeed the case. He understood that the students here weren't slacking off in their training. Training also required adequate rest. Liu Baijun looked at Han Cheng-ya. The strange thing he realized was that his own body, because of his heavenly martial body and the effects of the medicinal pills, was full of energy. As Han Cheng-ya approached, she casually handed him a towel and some water. After wiping his sweat with the towel, Liu Baijun asked Han Cheng-ya if he was really all right, as she had said. "What do you mean?" Han Song-ah brought up Yu Kang-ho, mentioning his extensive training under a family grandmaster. Yu Baekjun responded with, "And so?" Han Song-ah hesitated, unable to finish her sentence. Seeing this, Yu Baekjun smirked, guessing she was about to ask why he would bother challenging Kang-ho, knowing he'd be badly beaten. Why subject himself to humiliation? Han Seong-ah quickly denied this. Yu Baekjun pressed further. Embarrassed, Han Song-ah cleared her throat. Yu Baekjun took a large gulp of water. He assured Han Song-ah that his challenge wasn't made without thought. He had a plan. Curious, Han Song-ah asked what it was. "Is it a boxing technique?" His eyes were filled with intense curiosity. Ryu Baekjun thought to himself, For an instructor from the Sword Saint family, Han Seong-ah is quite an unusual individual. Typically, Sword Saint family members showed no interest in anything outside of swordsmanship, but Han Seong-ah was different. He was interested in other forms of combat besides swordsmanship. He even wanted to become stronger by utilizing them, like magic, for instance. However, due to his position as an instructor, he had to suppress this interest. Under these circumstances, seeing one of the family's heirs openly practicing fist techniques piqued his curiosity. In Seong-ah continued, "This is the Sword Saint family. We're not supposed to learn anything other than swordsmanship, or even try." He asked Ryu Baekgun why he insisted on using fist techniques. Ryu Baekgun retorted, "Who made that a rule?" Han Chang-ah looked perplexed. Ryu Baekgun scoffed. He pointed out, "Legend says the past martial god mastered all forms of combat, from swordsmanship to fist techniques, spear fighting, and even back to swordsmanship again. Then why does the Sword Saint family, which he founded, only use swords?" Han Chang-ah was speechless. Ryu Baekgun thought about a strange distortion within the Sword Saint family. The martial god mastered all martial arts, yet his successors obsessed over only swordsmanship. But there was a reason for this. A simple reason. Because the martial god only left behind sword techniques, namely the heaven-breaking swordsmanship. He didn't leave behind techniques for other weapons. Commonly known martial arts probably couldn't be used. So the family ended up only using the swordsmanship and footwork left behind by the martial god. And that's how the current Sword Saint family came to be. No one knows why the martial god did that, because he never directly showed himself, even in the game. Ryu Baekgun thought about how he unintentionally focused solely on swordsmanship. He looked at Han Seong-ah, calling himself greedy. In order to become stronger, he would learn and use anything. He believed that the Sword Saint, and even the successor to the martial god, should be like that. Han Seong-ah asked if it was okay even if it wasn't swordsmanship. Ryu Baekgun answered affirmatively. He pointed out that the martial god mastered swordsmanship, fist techniques, spear techniques, all martial arts, including swordsmanship, and became stronger because of it. He asked rhetorically what reason was there not to do the same. Hearing these words, a thoughtful expression crossed Han Seong-ah's face. She then fell into a long period of contemplation. Ryu Baekgun patiently waited. Han Seong-ah, emerging from her thoughts, nodded in understanding. She remarked that only someone unbound by the family's training methods, someone like Ryu Baekgun, could have such an idea. She then offered to help train him, saying that although her abilities were limited, she could assist if he needed it. A glimmer of light flashed in Ryu Baekgun's eyes at her words. He had intentionally trained in the conspicuous training grounds to pique Han Seong-ah's curiosity and gain a free skill. The condition for this event was to train with a skill other than swordsmanship, something that would pique Han Seong-ah's interest, and to possess exceptional talent. Now he possessed the heavenly martial body. Ryu Baekgun knew Han Seong-ah wouldn't let him off easily. Moreover, if he could build a good relationship with her during the training, he might even be able to make her his personal instructor. Suppressing a smile that threatened to break out, he mentioned to Han Seong-ah that he was overlooked by his family. If she taught him, she might be affected too. Han Seong-ah tilted her head in response. She said she was also considered an outsider in her family, since they were both in a similar situation of being ignored. It was fine. Ryu Baekgun knew the other instructors. I would make excuses to avoid teaching him. At this moment, only Han Seong-ah, who didn't care about others' opinions and did things at her own pace, could teach him. He nodded. He'd welcome it if she was willing to teach him. He then asked what she planned to teach. Han Seong-ah admitted she didn't understand martial arts, but she believed she could offer assistance with cultivation techniques. Ryu Baekgun thought help with cultivation techniques would be excellent. He knew within his family there were many talented individuals, skilled in areas beyond swordsmanship. However, these talents had remained largely untapped. He also knew Han Seong-ah possessed an exceptional aptitude for magic. She possessed traits associated with magic, holding the potential to become a magic swordsman like Yoon Song-ha. Because of this, he believed she could be a great asset in understanding mana control and cultivation techniques. Ryu Baekgun thought about matters related to specializations. He planned to wait until things settled down a bit, and then search for the observer's eye in the hero's path, a crucial item that hardcore players, regardless of their chosen path, would seek out and acquire to examine others' specializations. He thought to himself that he needed to visit the mortal realm sometime. Ryu Baekgun looked at Han Seong-ah. Han Seong-ah explained that the cultivation technique she taught was similar to the heaven-breaking technique used by her family, but she had modified it in her own way. Han Seong-ah placed her hand on his shoulder. Magic flowed into his body. She asked him if he had used the Three Disasters Star-Lord technique. She told him to try channeling his magic power, keeping the Three Disasters Star-Lord technique in mind. Ryu Baekgun did as she instructed. As he channeled his magic power using the Three Disasters Star-Lord technique, Han Seong-a's magic power also began to flow. It pulled and forcibly guided Ryu Baekjun's magic power, circulating it slowly throughout his body along a specific path. Ryu Baekjun realized that Han Seong-a was teaching him the method of energy circulation. He focused on feeling the flow of magic she was guiding. Once every detail was etched into his mind, Han Seong-a lifted her hand and told Ryu, "For Baekjun to manipulate magic like this might require... Some things require patience to understand." "I'll give it a try now," Yu Baekjun declared. Han Seong-a replied, "I'll help you." She placed her hand on Yu Baekjun's back once more. Under Han Seong-a's watchful gaze, Yu Baekjun slowly began to circulate the breaking sky star technique. He absorbed and channeled external magic power, carefully recalling the circulation path from moments ago. Yu Baekjun closed his eyes. A faint blue light emanated from his body. Han Seong-a watched, her eyes wide with surprise. Through the touch of her hand on his, she could feel the flow of his magic power. It was identical to the demonstration she had just given. Yu Baekjun was perfectly circulating the energy of the breaking sky star technique. Even though Han Seong-a had only demonstrated it once, he performed it flawlessly. How is this possible? Han Seong-a wondered to herself. She knew that Yu Baekjun resisted his family's training methods. Since no instructor was willing to teach him, he even taught himself the 3 Calamity Star extinction technique. In his eyes, Ryu Baekjun was a pitiful person. He could never possibly understand the heaven-sundering star law. Yet the way Ryu Baekjun was currently manipulating his magic power was like someone who had cultivated the heaven-sundering star law for a long time. More precisely, he was perfectly mimicking Han Seong-a's method. Ryu Baekjun's circulating magic power converged towards his dantian and began to condense. Seeing his enormous dantian, Han Seong-a couldn't help but be astonished once again. She thought that perhaps this was why he could perform the possession technique all day long. For someone who had just started practicing a new technique, a dantian of this size was unimaginable. Moreover, this perfect physique seemed to be a gift from the heavens. As Han Seong-a muttered to herself, Baekjun successfully circulated the new technique. He exhaled a breath imbued with blue magic and asked Seong-a for her opinion on his execution. Seong-a examined Baekjun's core and found that the magic he'd just absorbed had completely settled within his body. With his energy circulation activated, he had flawlessly executed the heaven-breaking punishment technique. Seong-a could only describe it as perfect. A bewildered Seong-a looked at Baekjun, asking if he had always been considered untalented. Baekjun confirmed, explaining that it was his father's assessment. Seong-a shook her head, unable to believe the clan leader would deem someone with such talent as untalented. It was impossible. Her confusion deepened. On the way back, Han Seong-a recalled Ryu Baekjun's earlier demeanor. She thought about how weak the youngest son of the Sword Saint family was, and how he wasn't qualified to be the head of the family. This was Ryu Baekjun's usual image. Even his family members thought so. A faint smile appeared on Han Seong-a's lips. The Sword Saint family was in the midst of a succession dispute. The grandmasters and instructors each supported their favored heir. With instructor Han Seong-a's assistance, Ryu Baekjun's training became increasingly intense. So after completing his daily training goals, he planned to return to his room for a good rest to recover. On the 6th day, Ryu Baekjun was still fully immersed in his training. Finally, his strength, agility, and stamina attributes reached B rank, and his magic power was also B rank. His unique ability was the Book of the War God, EX rank, 1 star. Special Constitution, Heavenly Martial Bodice rank. Skill Proficiency Requirement, B rank. Close Combat Technique, C rank, 1 star. 3 Calamity Fist Technique, B rank, 1 star. 3 Calamity Star Lord, C rank, 1 star. Heaven Breaking Star Technique, B rank, 2 stars. Focused Strike, C rank, 1 star. Attribute Enhancement, a rank, 1 star. Successfully raised all attributes to B rank. Skill Proficiency exceeds 5 stars. All skill levels increased by 1. This is a function of the hero's path system. When skill proficiency reaches the required level, the skill level increases and proficiency resets. The Heaven-Breaking Star technique is based on a cultivation method used by ancient martial gods. It has been improved upon, used by students and instructors to accumulate magical power, activate meridians, and awaken potential. The improved version increases the amount of magical power accumulated and its usage efficiency. It also reduces fatigue and improves physical condition. Lightfoot technique makes the body lighter, allowing for swift movement using magical power. It helps maintain balance and jump higher. Its derivative skill, Shunpo, allows for instantaneous jumps across a certain distance without consuming much magical power. With Han Seong-a's help, Ryu Baek-jun learned both the Heaven-Breaking Star technique and Shunpo. The modified Heaven-Breaking Star technique proved to be more comfortable to train with. Ryu Baek-jun marveled that Han Seong-a's training methods were like something out of a game. Like a Spartan, she pushed his body to its absolute limits. He knew he had to focus on the results of the Heaven-Breaking Star technique to persevere. Otherwise, he would have collapsed long ago. Han Seong-a was impressed that Ryu Baek-jun, under her Spartan training, never complained. She admired that he kept up with the pace and found him commendable. Ryu Baek-jun replied, this was a customized curriculum Han Chung-ya had designed for himself. He couldn't complain. Han Chung-ya saw that even his commendable attitude was worthy of praise. His initial coldness had vanished, replaced by almost overwhelming praise. Ryu Baek-jun felt that this was Han Chung-ya's true nature, as someone with similar thoughts, exceptional talent, and being a pleasant successor to interact with. It was natural for Han Chung-ya's attitude to shift. He then thought about how learning the Heaven-Breaking Heart technique made the 3 Disaster Star Chi awkward, but he had initially learned the 3 Disaster Star Chi to quickly master the Heaven-Breaking Star technique. After learning the latter, the former became useless. He speculated that once his proficiency with the Martial Gods book reached around 4 stars, there might be a way to utilize the 3 Disaster Star Chi. The Martial Gods book proficiency increased. It'll unlock special features. I can reach 2 stars quickly, but 4 stars will still take 10 days. I'll set this matter aside for now. After all, even the 3 Calamity Star Lords might not be of use then. Liu Baijun rose from his spot, preparing to return to his room to handle things. Just then, the training ground doors were flung open. Everyone inside turned to look at the entrance. The one who had barged in so rudely was Liu Kang-hao and his attendant, Liu Kang. Kang-hao scowled as he looked around, then spotted Liu Baijun. He barked out Liu Baijun's name. With heavy steps, Liu Kang-hao marched towards Liu Baijun. Liu Baijun calmly awaited him. Liu Kang-hao demanded of Liu Baijun, "Do you find yourself ridiculous?" Liu Kang-hao's teeth ground together in fury. He urged Baek-jun to beg their father for forgiveness. He claimed he'd spoken carelessly and wanted to declare the duel invalid. Baek-jun thought he seemed sincere, as if he said it out of genuine concern for his younger brother. Then Baek-jun scoffed. He stated that he and Kang-ho weren't close enough to worry about each other. Kang-ho called Baek-jun disrespectful and grabbed him by the collar, lifting him high in the air. He roared, saying it was a disgrace to duel someone like Baek-jun. He demanded to know if Baek-jun thought he could defeat him, if he thought he was an easier target than his other siblings. Baek-jun replied, not necessarily. Kang-ho raged, calling Baek-jun a talentless weakling who couldn't master a single martial art. He questioned how Baek-jun dared to look down on him. His eyes were fierce, as if he were ready to tear Baek-jun apart. Baek-jun sighed and called out, "Older brother?" Yu Kang-ho growled in a low voice. Yu Baek-jun grabbed Yu Kang-ho's hand, which was gripping his collar. With all his might, he twisted it. Yu Kang-ho released his grip, his wrist screaming in pain. Clutching his right hand, he stumbled backward. Yu Baek-jun glanced down at the palm-shaped scar on his right elbow. He insulted Yu Kang-ho, saying he was acting like a dog desperate to relieve itself. Yu Kang-ho looked confused. Yu Baek-jun landed on the ground and clicked his tongue. He pointed out that this was a duel sanctioned by their father. Neither of them could back down now, not unless one of them was defeated. It wouldn't end until then. He straightened his clothes. With a cold smile, he asked if Yu Kang-ho understood. Yu Kang-ho demanded to know why Yu Baek-jun had done this in the first place. Yu Baek-jun cut him off. He stared at him, his face expressionless. Kang-ho gulped nervously, barely aware of it. Baek-jun asked Kang-ho if he was afraid of losing to him. Silence descended upon the training ground. The onlookers were perplexed by Baek-jun's audacity. They were baffled. They couldn't believe those words had come from the Baek-jun they knew. Hash. The instructors were also taken aback by his bold declaration. Kang-ho's face turned icy. His previous rage seemed to vanish, as if extreme anger had brought a chilling calmness over him. He calmly said, "I'll see you tomorrow. Just wait until then." "I'll crush you in front of father." Baek-jun replied, "I hope you can." Kang-ho glared at Baek-jun for a moment, then turned and left the training grounds with his entourage. The training ground was left in an eerie silence, as if a typhoon had just passed through. Baek-jun could feel everyone's eyes on him, and left the training grounds. Rishu Baekgun thought he had completely enraged Ryu Kang-ho. He imagined Kang-ho was furious, wanting to crush him to pieces. The day of the duel arrived. It was the 7th day. Patriarch Ryu Mu-hyuk had designated the outdoor training grounds as the location. Ryu Jong-yeom and Yu Min were standing there.
Jong-yeom mentioned the dustiness of the place
and asked Min who had proposed the rematch. Min said she didn't know, guessing it might have been Baekgun. Jong-yeom was surprised by this and complained about the cold weather. The two walked onto the stage of the outdoor training grounds and sat in the chairs provided. Jong-yeom smiled and looked up at the sky. He saw that it was snowing, but found it odd that there was no snow accumulated on the family's land. He thought they should be thankful. The magical barrier enveloped the family's territory, Yu Min commented. Hopefully the barrier will also keep out the cold. Ji-yeon asked Yu Min if she needed a hand warmer. Yu Min declined. Ji-yeon looked behind her and mentioned the grandmasters. Yu Min also saw in the distance a middle-aged woman seated, along with a middle-aged man and 2 elderly men. Ji-yeon pointed out, "Those are the grandmasters of the Sword Saint family." The middle-aged woman is Ji-yeon-cha. The middle-aged man is Jongwon Chun. The 2 elders are Daewon Kwan and Kwon Mo-lee. Yu Min tugged on Ji-yeon's arm, motioning for her to look over there. Ji-yeon followed Yu Min's pointed direction and saw Kang Ho-yu warming up on the side of the stage. His expression was relaxed. He seemed confident that he wouldn't lose. This piqued Yu Jong-yeon's curiosity. She asked Yu Min who he thought would win today. Yu Min thought Yu Kang-ho was likely to win. Han Seong-ah greeted Yu Baek-jun, saying, "You're here." Yu Baek-jun asked him why he looked so worried. Han Seong-ah let out a soft sigh. He had the same anxious expression as Choi Seong-min. He said he didn't think Yu Baek-jun would lose, because he saw something during training. Yu Baek-jun replied, "Isn't that right? There's no need to worry then." Han Seong-ah pointed out that Yu Kang-ho was quite brutal. Even if Yu Baek-jun won, he was worried he might get seriously injured. Han Seong-ah took Yu Baek-jun's black ghost robe and handed him a metal-reinforced training suit and gloves. He told him this was the equipment for the duel. Yu Baek-jun asked how his older brother was doing today. Han Seong-ah commented that Yu Kang-ho looked good. He usually drinks every day, but he didn't drink yesterday. Yu Baek-jun was skeptical that skipping one day of drinking constituted sobriety. Han Seong-ah explained, "For Yu Kang-ho, this counts as sobriety. It seems he also considers today's duel important." Yu Baek-jun looked across at Yu Kang-ho's face contorted with rage. He felt that Kang-ho wanted to rip him to shreds right there. He thought, "I've completely enraged him." He guessed that as soon as the duel began, Yu Kang-ho would likely charge like an enraged bull. This would be a perfect opportunity. Yu Baek-jun knew that the lingering effects of Yu Kang-ho's previous serious injury were still present. That's also why he had been studying joint strikes, and the reason for his focused strike. He was considering resorting to some dirty tricks. After all, those skills would be extremely useful in this duel. A ferocious smile spread across his face. Just then, a new mission notification popped up. The mission was titled, "Become the Family's Black Sheep." The objective? Defeat the family's black sheep, the very person who had bullied him since childhood. Yu Kang-ho understood that life was cruel. To complete the mission, he had to fight and win against Yu Kang-ho in the duel. That would fulfill the mission requirements. The reward, 300 proficiency points and a level 1 martial gods book. His proficiency was increasing. For the first time, his proficiency was increasing faster than expected. He felt good about it. He clenched and unclenched his fists. Meanwhile, Yu Baek-jun saw Ryu Mu-hyuk step onto the stage. Ryu Mu-hyuk sat down in his seat and nodded slightly. This was the signal for the duel to begin. An instructor shouted from the stage, "Are both sides ready?" Accompanied by Han Seong-ah, Yu Baek-jun followed Yu Kang-ho onto the stage. The instructor announced the duel would now begin and started the countdown. From 1 to 5, Baek-jun regulated his breathing. He thought about how he was wearing a training uniform, holding a real sword in his hand, and that there was no rule against taking a life. He realized losing here would be no different from death. He clenched his fists tightly. When the instructor reached 50, the duel officially began. Kang-ho thought to himself, "I'm going to kill Yu Baek-jun." He knew this was a duel. With no rule against taking a life, he also held a real sword in his hand. He believed that to wash away this humiliation, he had to kill Baek-jun, or at least cripple him. Liu Kang-hao thought to himself. Only by killing or crippling Liu Baijun could he vent his anger. Immediately, he charged forward with his sword. He lowered his stance and his sword, using the momentum of his charge to thrust. His opponent, Liu Baijun, stood motionless. Liu Kanghao roared, his arm moving with blinding speed as he unleashed 5 consecutive thrusts. He executed the 9 Dragon Fangs technique of the sky-splitting sword style. However, due to incomplete memory recall, he could only manage 5 thrusts. He felt this was enough to deal with Liu Baijun. He believed that Liu Baijun, who hadn't even learned martial arts, could never dodge such a swift, blindingly fast attack. But just then, with a clang, Liu Baijun's legs glowed red. He kicked the ground forcefully with his ki-infused foot. Seeing this, Yu Kang-ho wondered to himself. Did Yu Baijun miss because he used too much force? He secretly mocked him. Over the past few days, Yu Baijun had accumulated 400 points by completing tasks. Although these points weren't enough to learn a powerful skill, they were sufficient to learn a useful one. Yu Baijun pondered which skill to learn. Without any hesitation, he thought about his time playing games. He always loved TC1 Star Joint Strike, C1 Star Gale, and TC1 Star. Yu Baijun thought about how opponents would curse at him for using these cowardly skills. But he believed that winning in the game was all that mattered. He would use any means necessary to achieve victory. Baijun reviewed the skill description. A sinister smile crept across his lips after he finished reading, combining the Earth Stairway with the attribute enhancement line. That could create interesting and deadly attack patterns. In a flash, with a whooshing sound, Baijun kicked up a cloud of sand and pebbles, engulfing Kang Ho. This disrupted Kang Ho's attack, rendering it useless. The stones pelted Kang Ho's entire body. Kang Ho cried out in pain, but the pain was excruciating, far more intense than what he should have felt from ordinary stones. Confused by the unexpected agony, he opened his eyes. He was shocked to see the sand and pebbles completely frozen, transformed into sharp, pointed arrows. Baijun peered through. These closed the distance to Yu Kang-ho with astonishing speed. Yu Kang-ho tried to defend, but it was too late. Yu Baijun threw the first punch, unleashing one of the 3 techniques of the 3-flower fist. An uppercut aimed directly at Yu Kang-ho's chin. The fist connected with Yu Kang-ho's jaw, sending a jolt through his brain. His body swayed from the impact. Yu Baijun didn't miss the opening. He quickly moved behind Yu Kang-ho, fist clenched. With his legs firmly planted, he positioned his fist below his waist. His eyes locked onto Yu Kang-ho's right elbow, the spot where it had been completely shattered by a monster when he was a child. He had barely survived, and the scar left at a vulnerable point. A glint flashed in Baijun's eyes. He knew that if an opponent had a weakness, he should relentlessly exploit it. Until they were finished, magical power surged into his fist. He drew his fist back like a bowstring, then slammed it into Yu Kang-ho's right elbow. The blow combined the passive effect of a joint strike with the focused power of his magic-infused force strike skill. The impact was tremendous. Yu Kang-ho's right arm snapped instantly. His arm bent at an unnatural angle. Yu Kang-ho screamed in agony, cursing Yu Baijun. But as a descendant of the Sword Saint family, Yu Kang-ho had honed his ambidexterity with a sword from childhood injuries. He switched his sword to his uninjured left hand and immediately attempted a counterattack. But before he could strike, Yu Baijun lightly tapped the ground. His body recoiled like a spring, executing flash step, a basic movement skill, Yu Kang-ho thought. Mid-air, Ryu Baijun couldn't execute that footwork, capitalizing on the seamless nature of the heaven-splitting sword technique. After the feint at Nine Dragons Cliff, he shifted to a low sword stance. He instantly chained the maneuver into a horizontal slash, unleashing Duanhua Liaosi, enveloping his sword in magical energy. Like a moon cleaved in two, the energy erupted in a circular arc, vowing to sever Ryu Baijun's arm. Suspended in midair, Ryu Baijun couldn't utilize Sunbu, seemingly left with no other option. He extended his metal-reinforced gauntlet. Witnessing this, Ryu Kang-ho erupted in laughter, scoffing at the idea of Ryu Baijun blocking the attack barehanded. He believed the sword would slice through his palm in an instant. But the moment the aura-enveloped blade made contact with Ryu Baijun's palm, a strange metallic clang resonated. Ryu Kang-ho was utterly stunned. He heard the unmistakable sound of metal grinding against metal, a grating, scraping noise. He stared at Liu Baijun's hand in shock. He saw an aura swirling around it, as hot and fiery as a flame. He recognized it as Gangqi, and not just ordinary Gangqi, but Gangtai imbued with an attribute. This type of skill required several times more comprehension than ordinary Gangqi to master. He was horrified. How was this possible, he wondered. Liu Baijun grabbed Liu Kanghao's sword blade. The blade heated up from the intense temperature. The heat became unbearable for Liu Kanghao's hand gripping the hilt, but he ignored the burning sensation. Liu Baijun told Liu Kanghao that while his older brother wasn't paying attention, he had been practicing a little. He then asked Liu Kanghao, "Didn't you know I could play the piano?" This seems like a mistranslation in the original script, likely meant to be a sarcastic remark about his gang chi skills. With that, Liu Baijun tightened his grip. The sword let out a deafening clang. It began to shatter. He then asked Kang Ho Ryu, "How does it feel to lose to a loser who only trained for a week?" Kang Ho Ryu cursed under his breath. Baek Gun Ryu slammed his fist into Kang Ho Ryu's stomach. Kang Ho Ryu went flying backward. Baek Gun Ryu pursued him, unleashing a flurry of kicks. Like whips, his legs lashed out repeatedly, striking Kang Ho Ryu all over his body. The final blow landed squarely on Kang Ho Ryu's spine. Kang Ho Ryu crashed to the ground. He lay there in a pathetic heap. His right arm was broken. His stomach, repeatedly pummeled, resulted in broken ribs. Baek Gun Ryu grabbed him by the hair. "In the Sword Saint family," he declared, "only the strong survive. The strong devour the weak. Now I am the strong, and you, Kang Ho Ryu, are the weak. And take everything he has. His home, his wealth, his position. These are the spoils of the victor." He then slammed Kang Ho's head into the ground. Kang Ho lost consciousness completely. His body went limp. Baek Jun snorted and stood up. He slowly surveyed the arena. Silence fell over the crowd. Family members and grandmasters stared at him in horror. Only Mu-hyuk was unfazed. Their eyes met. Mu-hyuk, his face expressionless, let out a soft chuckle. Daewon and Kunmo exclaimed, "How is this possible?" The grandmasters present had all instructed Baek Jun in his youth. They knew he had absolutely no talent for martial arts, and until this moment, he had never received a formal training. They thought that even with instructor Seong-ah's training, just 1 week, it wasn't nearly enough time to defeat Liu Kanghao. Someone asked Liu Jingyan if Liu Baijun had received any private training beforehand. Liu Jingyan replied that if he had trained privately, he wouldn't be in his current state. She'd had someone watching him previously, and nothing unusual was observed. Liu Jingyan nervously bit her finger, confused by the current situation. If what she just saw was true, Liu Baijun might possess a talent different from what everyone previously believed. But she also felt that the idea of Liu Baijun being a genius was absurd. After all, since he was a child, they had tried everything. Moreover, if Liu Baijun did have talent, her father would have known. Liu Jingyan glanced at Liu Wuhe and saw him smiling. He seemed amused by the outcome. Mu-hyuk rose from his seat. He declared the duel over. Mu-hyuk instructed his attendant, Shijong, to summon Baek Jun Ryu to his room. After Shijong acknowledged the order, Mu-hyuk left the training grounds. The remaining onlookers watched him depart. Their gazes then shifted to Baek Jun Ryu, still standing in the arena, and to where Kang Ho Ryu lay defeated. The duel was officially concluded. Attendants quickly carried Kang Ho Ryu to where Zhongwon-ju was located. Seong-ah Han approached Baek Jun Ryu. She offered him a black spirit robe. Baek Jun Ryu felt a warmth spread through him as he put it on. Seong-ah Han admitted she had expected him to be injured, but was surprised he'd won unscathed. She expressed her deep admiration. Looking at Seong-ah Han's sincere admiration, Baek Jun Ryu thought to himself that in this situation, if she asked him to be her personal instructor, he would probably accept with pleasure. The thought crossed her mind. If favorability scores were visible, his would be quite high right now. Just then, an attendant interrupted to inform Liu Baijun that the family head had summoned him. Liu Baijun remembered that the head would ask him which grandmaster he had chosen. He felt it was a pity to end things like this. Looking at Liu Kanghao being carried away, he thought about how his week-long training under his own guidance would surely worsen Liu Kanghao's standing within the family. That meant more things Liu Baijun could seize for himself. He wondered if he should try the same tactic as before. As Liu Baijun followed the attendant, he saw a notification appear. Complete. The Become the Family's Black Sheep mission had earned him 300 reputation points and the Martial Gods book. A message about proficiency increase followed. A satisfied smile spread across his face. Mu-hyuk's room was arranged like a royal court, spacious and lavishly decorated. It was reminiscent of ancient royalty. In the center of the court stood a throne. On either side, grandmasters
Mu-hyuk
and Kang Ho's attendants were waiting. Mu-hyuk sat on a throne, preserved from long ago. prepared for receiving outsiders. It was a seat of considerable authority. After a moment of silence with Baekjun, Mu-hyuk asked if Baekjun wanted to learn martial arts. Baekjun replied that he hoped to learn from the grandmasters. Mu-hyuk stated plainly that only the most talented members of the family could learn martial arts from the grandmasters. Then, with an impassive face, he looked down at Baekjun and asked if he possessed that level of talent. Baekjun countered, "Don't I?" This bold response left a nearby attendant in a state of panic. But Ryu Mu-hyuk seemed unfazed. Instead, he appeared satisfied. He then stated that Jin Mu-wan couldn't possibly train under every grandmaster. He would, however, permit him to choose one. Understanding that he could only choose one, Jin Mu-wan turned his gaze towards Cha Ji-hyuk, who was standing nearby. The four grandmasters, Cha Ji-hyuk, Chun Jung-won, Jeon Dae-won, and Lee Jun-mo, were all present. Knowing that three of them already supported the heir apparent, and to trigger a certain event, Jin Mu-wan had planned to choose Cha Ji-hyuk from the very beginning. Out of the four chief combat instructors, Cha Ji-hyuk possessed the most refined skills. Having long served the Northern Army, he dedicated himself to researching various martial arts. In order to improve the Northern Army's overall combat capabilities, his goal was to elevate the clan's martial prowess, rather than getting involved in the heir's feud. He devoted all his energy to improving the family, making contributions and nurturing talented students. Among his students, some even became combat instructors. Han Seong-ah was one of them. Ryu Baekjun informed Yu Mu-hyuk of his choice of Grandmaster Cha Ji-hyuk. Yu Mu-hyuk then asked Cha Ji-hyuk for his thoughts. Cha Ji-hyuk, with his eyes closed, didn't respond immediately. Since the family head couldn't force a Grandmaster to teach someone, the Grandmaster's will was paramount. If Cha Ji-hyuk refused, Ryu Baekjun wouldn't be able to learn from him. Everyone knew that Cha Ji-hyuk had previously taught other heirs. At most, he had only taught Ryu Taro a bit of swordsmanship. Compared to the heirs, he preferred to teach promising instructors, or a student. Perhaps to avoid getting entangled in the inheritance feud, Cha Ji-hyuk rose from his seat. He quietly walked behind Ryu Baekjun and said he had something he wanted to confirm. He asked Ryu Baekjun if he could spare a moment. After receiving an affirmative response, he placed his hand on Ryu Baekjun's shoulder and channeled his magic power into him. The magic power circulated throughout Ryu Baekjun's body, seemingly probing his physical structure. Afterwards, Cha Ji-hyuk gasped in astonishment. He declared that Ryu Baekjun possessed a perfect physique. Everyone who heard this drew a sharp breath. After all, Cha Ji-hyuk was known for his meticulousness in selecting talent. Yu Mu-hyuk asked Cha Ji-hyuk about his intentions again. Cha Ji-hyuk closed his eyes and pondered for a long moment. He mentioned his previous refusal to teach the heir, saying he disliked the ensuing complications.
Mu-hyuk acknowledged Ji-am's decision and respected his wishes.
Ji-am continued, explaining that he had to abandon his previous plan this time. Mayor Kwan slowly nodded, saying he would entrust Yusong City to Baekjun. Mu-hyuk simply replied, "As you wish." He then dismissed the others. As the conversation drew to a close, Baekjun, who had been listening quietly, spoke up saying he had a request. Mu-hyuk told him to speak freely. Baekjun requested access to the family's assets. This request caused a stir among the surrounding attendants, because Taro, Jungnieon, Kang-ho, and me were all allowed free use of the family funds. But Baekjun, having been previously abandoned, practically cast aside, had never been granted such a right. He only received enough money for basic living expenses. But now Baekjun, anticipating future expenses. For example, to acquire things in society, you need money. And considering the future, the more money, the better. After listening to Yu Baekjun's request, Yu Mu-hyuk agreed without much hesitation. He ordered that all of Yu Kang-ho's possessions be given to Yu Baekjun. And before Yu Kang-ho could come to his senses, he was forbidden from using any family assets. An attendant thought this punishment was too severe. Yu Mu-hyuk looked at the attendant, who had once mocked Yu Baekjun along with Yu Kang-ho. He retorted that while personal misbehavior towards a younger person was tolerable, neglecting to improve one's memory because of it was unforgivable. Then, he asked the attendant if Yu Kang-ho had been training diligently. Faced with Yu Mu-hyuk's question, the attendant hesitated, unable to answer properly. Yu Mu-hyuk's expression darkened. Note: Bin Lang refers to betel nut, which stains teeth red. This likely means his expression darkened, became stern. The attendant replied that Yu Kang-ho had not been training diligently. Yu Mu-hyuk immediately asked him. He had allowed Yu Kang-ho to behave like a delinquent. At first, he feigned ignorance. Then, Yu Mu-hyuk claimed it was because Kang-ho was talented. He slammed his foot down, emphasizing that if one doesn't cultivate their talent, if they lack the corresponding dedication, they are nothing in the family. He then asked what consequences Kang-ho would face. Mu-hyuk stated that Kang-ho had potential, and if he changed his ways and worked hard, he'd get another chance. Otherwise, he would be expelled from the family. There was no room for the weak in their family. Dejected, the others withdrew. Yu Mu-hyuk rose from his seat and dismissed everyone else, keeping only Cha Ji-yeon behind. The conversation ended there. After everyone else had left the room, Mu-hyuk stood by the window, gazing at the falling snow. Behind him, Ji-yeon sat alone, sipping tea with her eyes closed. A moment of quiet passed between them. Mu-hyuk was the first to break the silence. He asked Ji-yeon for her opinion on Baek-joon. Ji-yeon opened one eye, looking at Mu-hyuk's back. After confirming he was referring to the young master, she considered Baek-joon's physique. She called it a gift, a blessing from the heavens. A body and talent perfectly suited for martial arts. She could think of no other way to describe Baek-joon's talent. Because Baek-joon's bone structure, his musculature, even his mana flow and core size, were all impossibly perfect. She had seen countless talented individuals, but asserted that no one could compare to Ryu Baek-joon. He almost said that someone could rival him, but swallowed the words back down. Yu Mu-hyuk stated that he had been observing Ryu Baek-joon since he was a child, and for years believed him to be completely talentless. Cha Ji-yeok agreed with this assessment. Yu Mu-hyuk then questioned how Cha Ji-yeok could now claim that Ryu Baek-joon possessed a talent that even he found astonishing. Regarding this situation, Cha Ji-yeok said he didn't know the reason. He then asked Yu Mu-hyuk when he last saw Ryu Baek-joon. Yu Mu-hyuk recalled it was over a year ago. Cha Ji-yeok speculated that perhaps something had changed during that year. He also mentioned that Ryu Baek-joon had been away for several days. Yu Mu-hyuk slowly nodded, agreeing that something might have happened during that period. Contemplating the possibilities, Mu-hyuk closed his eyes in thought. He recalled discovering an unexpected talent in Baek-joon, whom he had already given up on, a talent that might even be the most exceptional among all the children. But the family succession was practically settled. He wondered how to handle this unexpected variable. Mu-hyuk then inquired about Tairo's return. Ji-yeon informed him it was in 2 months, so there should be about a month and a half left. Tairo should currently be conquering a dimensional gate. Ji-yeon finished his last sip of tea, waiting for Mu-hyuk to continue. Mu-hyuk stated that the Sword Saint family followed the law of survival of the fittest, where the strongest ruled. The fight for succession wasn't over. Ji-yeon understood his meaning and asked if he intended to give Baek-joon a chance. Ryu Woo-hyuk stated that if Baek-yu could prove his worth, then it would be acceptable. He then burst into laughter, finding the situation quite amusing. Outside, a fierce wind howled, as if bearing witness to the family's future. Note: bathroom in the original seems to be a typo and doesn't make sense in context. Change to a more fitting word. Baek-yu decided not to meet Cha Ji-yeon immediately, but to rest for 2 days first. Baek-yu consulted the Book of Martial Gods, looking for information on the EX2 star. He learned that it referred to someone who had reached a godlike level in martial arts, a book left behind at the end of a life. Within its pages, every martial art in the world was recorded. Even newly created techniques were automatically documented by an unknown force. He also learned that points could be earned through missions or personal actions. These points could be used to learn skills recorded in the book and to acquire special traits. He knew these traits were similar to innate talents. Once the Martial Gods book reached a 2-star proficiency, it could be used to obtain these traits. However, the exact method remained unclear. He recalled that when he first obtained the Martial Gods book, he was granted the Heavenly Martial Body trait. He speculated that perhaps, along with the martial arts being recorded, the traits of those who used them were also documented. But he also understood that much about the Martial Gods book remained a mystery. The same was true for its owner, the Martial God. Even though he had played this game countless times, he still didn't understand the underlying principles. He also remembered that the cost of acquiring special traits was quite high. In the hero's path, event triggers often included possessing certain traits. When these events occurred, those traits would usually be strengthened or grant other rewards. Therefore, learning traits that could trigger events was crucial. As a hardcore gamer, he knew this very well. Ryu Hakujun needed to recover from the fatigue accumulated from training and duels. He also needed to organize his assets. While organizing Ryukangho's belongings, Hakujun was impressed by how much his older brother had amassed. The attendant informed him that there were also many jewels. Hakujun instructed the attendant to pack everything, leaving nothing behind. Hakujun thought to himself. As expected, given Ryukangho's lavish spending habits, his family possessed a considerable amount of jewelry. There was a vast collection of jewels and other precious gemstones, along with gold bars and various other valuable items. He pondered to himself, trying to estimate the total value of these assets. Choi Sungmin asked Yubek Jun, "What do you plan to do with the money?" "After selling all of this?" After all, Yubek Jun had never shown much interest in material wealth. Yubek Jun replied that he had a use for it, and asked, "Is the account ready?" Choi Sungmin confirmed that he had set it up yesterday. He then handed over a black card. It was a card used by only the wealthiest 0.1% of the world. Yubek Jun knew that although the Sword Saint's family was confined to Snowy Moon Mountain, they were incredibly wealthy. He surmised that they had amassed their fortune by selling items that came out of the dimensional gate since ancient times. Of course, they were rich. He remembered another detail from the setup. It mentioned his family owning a vast amount of real estate in Seoul. He was now the youngest son of this wealthy family. He couldn't help but chuckle bitterly at the irony of this so-called life reversal. After all, the major event that was about to unfold would throw everything into chaos. Yubek Gyun asked Choi Sung-min about a place in Seoul's Gangnam district called the Somnium Bar. Apparently, they held a monthly auction there, with the next one scheduled for next week. He instructed Choi Sung-min to find out what items would be auctioned and report back. He also told him to grab a bite to eat while he was out. Choi Sung-min replied that going outside wasn't a problem. After all, the Sword Saint's family had a teleportation magic circle created with the help of the magic tower, allowing easy travel to and from Seoul. However, the mana consumption was extremely high, preventing frequent use. Yubek Gyun sat on the bed. Outside, the snow was still falling. Although the snow didn't reach inside the family estate, the air was still frigid. He breathed out a puff of white air, pondering whether he should spend his stat points before leaving. He had earned 300 points from completing the Yu Liu Kang-related mission. He'd earned 300 points. He felt that this number was somewhat awkward. He considered using them to learn a new skill, but he didn't feel the urgent need for any particular skill at the moment. After all, he would be receiving training from Chaji-yuk for a while. He decided that learning a trait would be the best option. He knew that certain traits would be helpful during training. He opened the book and looked at the table of contents. He found a C-rank trait called energetic. Its effect was that his body would not tire easily, and he would recover from fatigue faster than normal people. Although it was only a C-rank trait and not particularly outstanding, but quite practical, it allows for easy dissipation of fatigue accumulated from training. Even with less sleep, he'd be more energetic than others. Chunbekri thought to himself, since I can no longer gain the beneficial effects of the elixir, at least I should utilize this trait. After all, during previous all-night training sessions, the elixir's effects were remarkable, but I can't rely on the elixir forever. He knew that traits were usually more expensive than skills. 300 points for a C-rank trait. Learning additional traits in the game was also difficult. He understood this. Finally, he decided to earn points through missions that appeared during training. He would learn useful traits that way. He then continued on his way. In the world of Hero's Path, there were generally two ways to learn skills. One was through training. The second is by directly absorbing and learning from skill books. Ryu Baekjun knew that skill books were extremely rare. Low-level common skills were plentiful, but high-level skills were incredibly difficult to obtain. They were scarce and exorbitantly expensive. Therefore, the conventional method of learning skills, training with skill books, was like stumbling upon an unexpected surprise. Ryu Baekjun's ability to utilize the Book of the War God meant he could essentially experience this kind of unexpected joy at any time. Moreover, as the heir to the Sword Saint family, he had access to the desired training, which was incredibly advantageous for him at present. Ryu Baekjun thought that the wooden martial arts training ground, where he had agreed to meet with Chaiji-yuk, was filled with a faint, pleasant fragrance upon entering. It fit the setting perfectly. Chaji-yuk was sitting in the center of the training ground. He sipped his tea with his eyes closed, looking completely at ease. He asked Yubek Jun about the numerous tasks he'd mentioned earlier. Inquiring if they were all completed, Yubek Jun confirmed they were finished apologizing for not making him wait long. Cha Ji-yeon dismissed the apology and invited Yoo Baek-jun to sit across from her. Unsure if he enjoyed tea, she offered him a choice. Yoo Baek-jun replied he didn't mind it. Cha Ji-yeon then poured him a refreshing cup of green tea. They enjoyed a moment of peaceful silence. Cha Ji-yeon then asked Yoo Baek-jun what he wanted to learn from her. Should she teach him swordsmanship, like she did with other direct descendants? After all, the sky-splitting swordsmanship was the signature martial art of the Sword Saint family. Every direct descendant in the family, or if all the students were practicing. However, there was a difference in the techniques. Some passed down only to direct descendants. Baek-ryu pondered this. Normally, learning swordsmanship would be the logical choice. After all, Heavenbreaker swordsmen were inherently powerful, and their power increased with proficiency. But he had already made up his mind. He told Ji-yeok-cha that he wanted to learn fist techniques. Ji-yeok's eyes widened in surprise. He had instinctively assumed that Baek-ryu would choose swordsmanship. Ji-yeok asked Baek-ryu to confirm if he truly wanted to learn fist techniques. Baek-ryu answered in the affirmative. Ji-yeok was perplexed by this. After all, his family was known as the Sword Saints. In a family that placed such importance on swordsmanship, Baek-ryu was asking to learn fist techniques. Ji-yeok said that he wasn't unskilled in fist techniques, but was confused by Baek-gun's request. Baek-gun explained that he wasn't neglecting his swordsmanship. Fist fighting was just the beginning. He wanted to master all forms of martial arts. Ji-yeon's expression changed upon hearing this. He remarked that Baek-gun's ambition sounded like he was trying to emulate the ancient martial gods. Baek-gun agreed, stating that he would learn and utilize anything that could help him become stronger, just like the ancient martial gods. Ji-yeon fell into deep thought. Baek-gun looked at him meaningfully. Then he mentioned that he had heard Ji-yeon had researched many martial arts supposedly used by the ancient martial gods. Ji-yeon admitted to this. Baek-gun then asked if he had any findings that could be of use to him. Cheon Ji-hyuk stared at Yoo Baek-jun, his gaze piercing as if trying to see right through him. In reality, he was contemplating something. Cheon Ji-hyuk pondered events connected to himself. The one who would become the martial god's successor. Was it about to begin? In this event, Cheon Ji-hyuk would notice the protagonist's talent and impart his martial arts skills. There were two conditions to trigger this event. First, one needed to possess the heavenly martial body. Second, one had to master any C rank or higher fist technique. At that moment, Yoo Baek-jun, the heir to the Sword Saint family, suddenly requested to learn fist techniques. He needed to master at least one C-rank fist technique to demonstrate his interest in them, and Yoo Baek-jun happened to fulfill both conditions. He now waited patiently for Cheon Ji-hyuk's invitation for tea. Commissioner Ryu Baek-jun seemed certain that Cha Ji-hyuk knew something. Ryu confirmed his suspicion. He had sought out Ji-hyuk precisely because he believed Ji-hyuk might know that particular martial art. That's why he came to him. The martial art was said to have been used by an ancient martial god. Ji-hyuk set down his teacup. He confirmed what Commissioner Ryu had said. He knew a martial art that he had discovered through studying ancient texts and traveling the world. Ryu asked what kind of martial art it was. Ji-hyuk replied, "It's the one said to have been used by the ancient martial god." Ryu's eyes lit up. He realized that this was practically equivalent to successfully passing the incident. Ji-hyuk then explained to Ryu that there was a problem with the martial art he knew. This is an incomplete martial art. Although we found the secret manual, it only contains a fragment of the whole. Many of the moves have been lost to time. Cha Ji-hyuk stated frankly that if Ryu Baek-jun wanted to become stronger, learning the Breaking Heaven Spear technique would be a better choice. But Ryu Baek-jun shook his head firmly. Insisting on learning this particular martial art, he pleaded with Cha Ji-hyuk to teach him. Cha Ji-hyuk reiterated that if Ryu Baek-jun truly desired strength, the Breaking Heaven Spear technique offered a surer path. Yet Ryu Baek-jun remained resolute, shaking his head. He reiterated his desire to learn the incomplete martial art. And again he implored Cha Ji-hyuk to be his teacher. Cha Ji-hyuk sighed at Ryu Baek-jun's stubbornness. Then he stood up. He gestured to Ryu Baek-jun and walked outside. He explained that since he had decided to teach him martial arts, and if this was Ryu Baek-jun's wish, then he had an obligation to fulfill it. They headed towards what appeared to be a courtyard. The current training grounds, built with ordinary timber, wouldn't be able to withstand the force of a hunter's skills. The skills might shatter the training grounds. Arriving at the courtyard, Baek-jun saw other students training. He recognized some of the faces. He couldn't help but admire Jion's remarkable ability to judge character. These students were exceptionally talented. As the game progressed, they would surely rise to prominence. They were all handpicked by Jion, who intended to nurture them carefully, a testament to his keen eye for talent. Baekjun mentioned the crowd in the courtyard. Jion asked if it made him feel pressured. Baekjun assured him it didn't. As Jion entered the courtyard, the students stopped their training and greeted him. He gestured for them to continue, then walked with a light step towards the center of the courtyard. Ryu Baekgyun followed close behind. Cha Ji-hyuk mentioned again that the martial arts he'd found were incomplete. He only knew 2 moves for sure. With those 2 moves as the core, he'd created his own sequence to supplement them. Then Cha Ji-hyuk gestured, and 3 magic straw dummies sprouted from the ground. He rolled up his sleeves, preparing to show Ryu Baekgyun the 2 moves. These were the moves Ryu Baekgyun was to learn. Cha Ji-hyuk closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the surrounding air grew heavy. The students gasped. Only Ryu Baekgyun remained calm. He figured it was about time for a quest to pop up. As he stared blankly into the air, a ding sound signaled a quest notification. Ryu Baekgyun checked the quest. It was titled, "But of course, because I'm a genius." News of his victory over Yu Kang-ho had spread throughout the family. But people were still skeptical. He needed to show them his overwhelming talent. The reward, 200 gold pieces. Yu Baekgyun scoffed, thinking the task ridiculously easy. Cha Ji-yeon took a deep breath in the courtyard's center. All the students and instructors stopped their training, watching what he was about to do. Someone asked curiously what he would demonstrate. The answer, fist techniques. Cha Ji-yeon announced he would begin. He moved slowly, then stomped his foot with force. The ground caved in. Magical energy radiated outwards from his toes. He took another deep breath. The surrounding magic transformed into a wind that enhanced speed, enveloping his body. Cha Ji-hyuk launched forward, pushing off the ground with his foot. He twisted his waist with a powerful motion, extending his right arm back with all his might. A surge of energy gathered at his fingertips. As he reached the scarecrow, he unleashed a ferocious punch with a mighty roar. His fist arced through the air, connecting with the scarecrow's face. Energy erupted from Cha Ji-hyuk's fingertips. The released magic power took the form of a dragon before exploding. With a single blow, his devastating punch shattered the scarecrow's face. The impact of the explosion ripped through the scarecrow's body. Cha Ji-hyuk let out a breath, explaining to Yu Baekgyun that this was the first form he knew, recorded in the densetsu as Heaven's Destruction. Yu Baekgyun remarked that it was a truly fitting name. Its destructive power is immense. Cha Ji-yeon explained that this technique consumed a massive amount of magical power. He wasn't sure if Ryu Baekgyun, in his current state, could handle it. His words were laced with concern, not condescension. Ryu Baekgyun, with a serious expression, asked Cha Ji-yeon for a demonstration of the subconscious technique. Cha Ji-yeon gestured to an instructor, and several offensive, magic-firing straw dummies appeared in the courtyard. The instructor obscured the process of the dummies, firing their magic projectiles. The projectiles embedded themselves in the wall with a small explosion. The instructor explained that their power had been minimized. While they wouldn't cause injury, being hit would still be quite painful. Ryu Baekgyun questioned the need for so many dummies. Cha Ji-yeon explained it was to showcase the scope of the upcoming technique. Magic power gathered in Cha Ji-yeon's palm like a blue film enveloping his hand. He slowly moved his hand and softly commanded the scarecrows to attack. Instantly, dozens of magic spheres shot towards Ji-ok. With astonishing speed, Ji-ok began to move his hands, covered in a thin film of magic in a peculiar way. He drew a spiral pattern, and as the magic spheres touched his palms, they vanished. The magic contained within them lingered in his hands. Ji-ok gathered this magic and condensed it into a larger magic sphere. He then fired it back at the magic scarecrows. After completing the demonstration, Ji-ok turned and met Baekjun's gaze. He explained that the move he just showcased was called counter-offensive, a skill that counters the opponent's attack. Baekjun thought this skill seemed quite useful against mages. Ji-ok stated that although he hadn't used it in actual combat, he agreed with that possibility, but he doubted it could block a truly powerful spell. After witnessing both demonstrations, Yu Baekjun nodded. He knew that Cha Ji-yeon would next ask if he had seen everything clearly. As expected, Cha Ji-yeon asked if he had seen clearly. And if he was satisfied, Yu Baekjun eagerly affirmed, anxious to complete the newly assigned task. Yu Baekjun knew what he had to do. He immediately declared that he wanted to try imitating it. Cha Ji-yeon thought imitating it after only one demonstration would be difficult. A decent imitation. Baek-jun Ryu agreed it might be, but he had his own understanding. He wanted to try using it before peak season. Ji-yeon-cha's eyes widened. When she heard Baek-jun wanted to use the skill, she took a few steps back, as if giving him permission to try. The surrounding students whispered, debating if Baek-jun could pull it off. They believed that, even with his talent for defeating Kangho Ryu, imitating a martial art after only seeing it once would be clumsy. Ji-yeon remained impassive, listening to the whispers, allowing Baek-jun to proceed. Baek-jun stood in the center of the courtyard, contemplating how to master the skill. Usually it required learning from a master, or rigorous self-training, but he possessed the heavenly martial body, allowing him to quickly grasp and master any martial art. He was confident he could understand Cha Ji-yeon's movements, his thought process, the way his body moved, the workings of his muscles and bones, and the flow of his magic. He gave the instructor a slight nod. Try starting from the second form. Ryu Baek-gyun's brief instruction left the instructor puzzled, but he still looked at Cha Ji-yeon. Cha Ji-yeon nodded, signaling to the instructor to begin. Then, with a boom, the magic straw dummies rose. There were fewer of them than during Cha Ji-yeon's demonstration. This was likely considering Ryu Baek-gyun's lower ability, and to prevent him from getting injured. Then, magic power converged, and the dummies created magic orbs. Their barrels were precisely aimed at Ryu Baek-gyun. Ryu Baek-gyun silently counted in his mind. When he reached 3, the mana ball shot out with considerable speed. Ryu Baek-gyun watched the approaching mana ball, vividly recalling Cha Ji-hyuk's recent movements. He remembered the muscle and bone movements, and the flow of mana. He was confident he remembered everything perfectly, and he thought to himself, I've done this thousands of times! Ryu Baek-gyun circulated his own mana. Unlike Cha Ji-hyuk before him, he channeled flame mana. Immediately, a thin film of flames formed around his palm. He moved his hand in a spiral, and as the mana ball reached his palm, it dissipated as if melting. Ryu Baek-gyun absorbed the mana. However, the external mana rampaged once inside his body. After suppressing the mana, he immediately moved. This action puzzled the onlookers. Some wondered why he acted so quickly. They wondered, wouldn't he retaliate, just like Master Cha Ji-hyuk? Meanwhile, Cha Ji-hyuk watched everything with surprise. Ryu Baek-gyun took a deep breath and stomped his foot. The ground caved in, with his heel as the center. Flames spread out in all directions. A fiery whirlwind formed. Ryu Baek-gyun planned to use the enemy's magic power. To strengthen himself, hot air enveloped his body. He lowered his stance and lunged forward. Blazing flames chased after him. As he charged, he twisted his waist dramatically and stretched his right arm back with all his might. Intense flames converged on his palm. As the distance to the scarecrow closed, he unleashed a ferocious punch, arcing through the air. It struck the scarecrow, and the fiery energy in his palm exploded. Immediately after, a dragon-like flame erupted from his fingertip. It engulfed the training dummy. The completely shattered dummy burst into flames. A grandmaster watching from the side clicked his tongue and remarked, Ryu Baek-gyun's technique is similar to Grandmaster Cha Ji-yeon's. It's very similar to the one Grandmaster Cha Ji-yeon uses, but it seems he's modified it in his own way. The instructor looked at Cha Ji-yeon with a puzzled expression. Cha Ji-yeon was equally astonished. He realized Ryu Baek-gyun had perfectly mimicked his movements. Even the way he channeled his mana was identical, including the foot stomp, the exaggerated twist of the waist, and the backward extension of his right arm, and the precise timing of his mana manipulation. Cha Ji-yeon let out a gasp. Even he, a renowned genius, had taken a long time to master this technique. Yet Ryu Baek-gyun had learned it after seeing it only once, although it wasn't perfect yet. But for now, this level of skill is quite impressive. At that moment, Ryu Baek-gyun's and Cha Ji-hyuk's eyes met. Only then did Cha Ji-hyuk notice the surrounding students whispering amongst themselves. They were surprised, it being their first time seeing Cha Ji-hyuk react this way. So surprised, in fact, that they began to doubt the long-standing rumor of Ryu Baek-gyun's supposed lack of talent. They wondered if the rumors were entirely baseless. Cha Ji-hyuk cleared his throat, silencing the murmuring students. Cha Ji-hyuk apologized to Ryu Baek-gyun. Ryu Baek-gyun, seemingly unfazed, replied that he was well aware of the rumors surrounding him within the family. Cha Ji-hyuk continued, stating that Ryu Baek-gyun's counterattack, his offensive maneuver, and his ability to use absorbed magic to execute the extinction technique was admirable. After all, absorbing from external sources and immediately utilize someone else's magical power. This process defied common sense. Ji-woo humbly replied that compared to Cha Ji-hyuk, his own total magical power was insignificant. He felt he couldn't possibly unleash annihilation magic like him. He was simply thinking of temporarily borrowing the insufficient magic power from an external source. Cha Ji-hyuk first shook his head after hearing this. Then, he looked at Ji-woo with an even more fervent gaze than before. He said that from the first time he saw him, he sensed Ji-woo possessed extraordinary talent. He wondered to what extent he could teach him. Ji-woo replied that as long as Cha Ji-hyuk taught him, Ji-woo glanced at a notification that popped up on the side of his vision. He quickly gave a slight smile. He said he would learn with an open mind. It was a message indicating that the mission had been completed. Ji-woo immersed himself in a week-long training session. Naturally, he trained him like a fish just learning to swim. He pushed him through rigorous training. He trained so relentlessly that not a single day passed without the sounds of his efforts echoing through nature's dojo. After a full week, an exhausted Ryu Baekjun collapsed haphazardly in the courtyard. Gazing at the sky, he lamented, "I'm so tired because I haven't engraved any pills." He had barely slept for nearly 2 weeks. Completely focused on his training, it was only natural that he felt exhausted. As he stared at the sky, Han Seong-ah approached. She brought him a tonic that master pharmacist Ju Jong-won had prepared. Worried about Ryu Baekjun's health, she offered him something to wipe his sweat. Like a secretary, Han Seong-ah stayed by his side, taking care of him. Ju Jong-won was probably worried he'd only focus on training, so he prepared several iron supplements. Ba-yun said, "I never would have thought that Han Seong-ah would become the direct bodyguard of the family heir." He mentioned that Seong-ah had told him before that she wanted to remain neutral, not wanting to get caught up in the messy heir disputes by supporting someone. Ji-yeon's eyes widened. Ji-yeon and Seong-ah had a history. After all, Seong-ah was one of Ji-yeon's former disciples. Seong-ah turned her head, a little embarrassed, and said, "People change their minds as they live." Ji-yeon said that if that was Seong-ah's decision, then so be it. After all, it was Seong-ah. She must have thought it through carefully. Cha Ji-yeon nodded. Then she looked behind her at the magic puppets that had been damaged during Ryu Baekjun's training with the Returner and the Heaven Destroyer. The damaged magic puppets lay scattered around. Ryu Baekjun offered to pay for the repairs himself. Cha Ji-yeon said it was all right. They were expendable after all. If they could contribute to Ryu Baekjun's growth, the cost was nothing. Ryu Baekjun asked if he should consider it an honor. Cha Ji-yeon told him he could think of it however he liked. Cha Ji-yeon smiled warmly. The smile made Ryu Baekjun think that even though she probably didn't have any children, she seemed like a mother who had a son. She had the air of a doting mother about her. She mentioned that Yu Tae-rang's return was about a month and a week away. Ryu Baekjun said that he already knew that. Cha Ji-yeon softly asked Ryu Baekjun if he also wanted to inherit the Sword Star family. Ryu Baekjun nodded without hesitation. He said it was too late to turn back now, since he had already shown his fangs. His older siblings wouldn't let him go. Cha Ji-yeon said there was also the option of joining another heir's faction like Yu Kang-ho did. Ryu Baekjun let out a sarcastic laugh. Did Cha Ji-yeon really think he would do that? Yu Kang-ho gave up his right to inheritance and joined Yu Tairo's side, essentially handing over his own life. Cha Ji-yeon commented that if Yu Jong-myung and Yu Rian were still alive, the current inheritance situation might be even more complicated. Ryu Baekjun confirmed that Cha Ji-yeon was talking about his older brother and sister. Cha Ji-yeon added that Yu Jong-myung in particular was someone Yu Jong-am cherished deeply. Remember how devastated Chairman Ryu was when Ryu Jong-myung passed away? Ryu Jong-myung and Ryu Lippan were Chairman Ryu's other siblings. Now they're both gone. Jong-myung died at the Dimensional Gate. Lippan died in an accident. At least, that's the official story. Cha Ji-yeon approached Chairman Ryu, warning him that from now on, the other potential successors wouldn't go easy on him. He should be wary of Ryu Taro and Chairman Ryu. They both had strong ambitions for the position of successor. They would stop at nothing. Chairman Ryu chuckled bitterly, saying he knew that. He knew it better than anyone. Chairman Ryu and Han Chang-ah left the dojo. He wanted to learn more, but there's so much to do. There's no more time to waste. Choi Seung-myung greeted Ryu Baekjun as soon as he saw him. Baekjun asked Seung-myung about the favor he'd asked regarding the Somuin auction. Did Seung-myung remember? Seung-myung confirmed he had looked into it. The auction was tomorrow. Apparently, items from another world would be up for bidding. Among them, a particularly special item, the body of a rare spirit beast. Han Seong-ah was puzzled, but Baekjun's eyes lit up. He knew this was the item he had been waiting for. Baekjun asked about the admission ticket.
Seong-myung
Handed Baekjun the ticket he had already secured. The invitation was written in an archaic script. It read Sumiyuin. The auction was scheduled to begin tomorrow at 9 p.m. Yu Baekjun said it was currently 2 p.m. They needed to pack up and leave for Seoul immediately. Han Seong-ah asked Yu Baekjun, "We're going to Seoul right after finishing training today. Are we going to the auction?" Yu Baekjun confirmed, adding that Han Seong-ah would be going too. Han Seong-ah's eyes widened. She hadn't expected to be invited along. Yu Baekjun said that no one should recognize him, but as the heir to the Sword Star family, he needed someone to act as his bodyguard in public. Yu Baekjun and Han Seong-ah arrived in Seoul together. Yu Baekjun marveled at how much Seoul had changed. Seoul's scenery was vastly different from where he lived. There were buildings he had never seen before, and on the streets there were people who looked like hunters walking around. Ryu Baekjun mentioned the family distribution in Seoul. He said they would provide a vehicle. There was no need to refuse, but he wanted to walk. He felt that seeing things through a car window was different from seeing them firsthand. Han Seong-ah sighed after hearing this. The Jeomsum family's teleportation magic circle led to the family's estate in Seoul. It was an excessively luxurious building. They declined the offered vehicle. They wanted to see the city for themselves. Ryu Baekjun spotted a building and asked Han Seong-ah if it was something like the Hunter Association. Han Seong-ah confirmed it was, adding that, due to a lack of real power, it was just a symbolic organization. Ryu Baekjun believed that compared to the association, the individual guilds held more power.
nodded.
The monsters and gates appeared. Hundreds of years ago, since then, hunters have formed organizations to deal with them. Organizations like the Sword Star family, for example. These organizations, as time went on, evolved into guilds. Organizations like the Magic Tower or certain prestigious families mostly pursue the interests of the hunters and their own organizational gains. Over time, the power they accumulated became immense. Often, even the Hunter Association or the government couldn't match their influence. Han Chang-ya explained that ordinary hunters might care about this, but someone like Ryu Baekjun wouldn't need to worry about these organizations. Ryu Baekjun agreed. Han Chang-ah said, "The Hunters Association is just a symbolic entity. But that's not the case for ordinary hunters. The association manages hunters nationwide. I controls access to gates and provides job referrals." Yu Baekjun thought that was true for now, but things would change once Han Chang-woo joined. Things would be different then. Baekjun and Chang-ah strolled through Seoul, enjoying the walk. Chang-ah seemed conscious of their surroundings, glancing around before telling Baekjun that many people were staring at them. Baekjun figured anyone would stare, seeing how he and Chang-ah were dressed. It was only natural. Chang-ah asked, a puzzled look on her face, if that was really the case. After a long walk, Baekjun and Chang-ah finally reached their destination. Ryu Baekjun spotted a small building. The sign read Somnium Bar. Somnium means dream in Latin, I think. He went inside. Ryu Baekjun approached the bartender, Kubo. Kubo welcomed Ryu Baekjun and asked him what he would like. Ryu Baekjun said he wanted to go downstairs. He quickly presented his ticket. After carefully examining the ticket, Kubo silently opened the door behind the counter. On the other side of the door was a staircase leading down. "This place has the feel of..." Han Seong-ah began. A scene from a movie. Ryu Baekjun reminded Han Seong-ah again, not to gawk around like a country bumpkin. He then proceeded down the stairs. At the bottom stood a group of guards who looked quite capable. Ryu Baekjun thought they might be hunters. He showed the guards his ticket. The previously sealed entrance opened. Upon entering, a completely different world unfolded before their eyes. The sheer opulence of the place dwarfed the shabby bar upstairs. It was unimaginable. It resembled a high-end casino. In the center, a bar displayed a lavish spread of snacks. Numerous staff members moved through the crowd carrying trays laden with wine and champagne. They weaved their way through the throng. Han Seong-ah gasped, telling Yu Baekjun, "There are so many people." "From up here, they look like ants," she added. Yu Baekjun cautioned her, "They might not appreciate being called ants." Han Seong-ah acknowledged his point. The sheer number of people present was astonishing. At first glance, everyone seemed to be dressed in expensive, high-quality clothing. Among them were some who exuded an aura of immense power, hunters. Baekjun marveled at the sheer scale of the underground space. Just now I mistook the hunters for security guards. The owner of this place must be incredibly wealthy. Seong-ah agreed with Baek-ryun's assessment. She then asked him, "Do you know who the owner is?" Baek-ryun didn't answer. He knew the owner was a wealthy individual with peculiar hobbies, but not someone with malicious intent. We might encounter them again at future events, he thought. Moments later, the MC walked onto the stage. "Thank you all for waiting," he announced. All eyes focused on the stage. With a beaming smile, the MC welcomed everyone to the Somyuin auction. He explained that this was an auction featuring rare items from both this world and another. He added that today, they would be showcasing precious artifacts from the other world and items dropped by special monsters. He then asked the audience if they wanted a sneak peek. With that, he clapped his hands. Immediately, the lights outside the stage dimmed. Stagehands wheeled out a large crate from backstage. Han Sung-ah curiously wondered what could be inside. Yoo Baek-gyun guessed it was probably the item to be auctioned. Just as Yoo Baek-gyun predicted, the first auction item appeared as the chest opened. It was a B-grade tool. Ryu Baek-jun showed no interest in it. He knew that aside from the remains of magical creatures, all other items were random. Therefore, he had no idea what would appear. Sometimes rare items would show up, and sometimes very ordinary ones. So, stifling a yawn, he waited for the auction to continue. The host then announced, "The next item to be showcased is from another world. An A-grade item obtained from the Dark Zone." However, this wasn't something useful to Ryu Baek-jun either. Suppressing another yawn, he continued to wait for the main attraction. Han Chang-ah, who had shown little interest in the auction item so far, now expressed interest for the first time. She let out a gasp of wonder. Ryu Baek-jun, curious, also looked towards the item. The host addressed the audience, saying, "As you can all feel, this time the item is actually a skill book." He paused for dramatic effect, then revealed that it contained magic. Baek-jun's eyes lit up. He realized this was something worth buying. A skill book, he thought, and it's related to magic. The host continued, explaining that it was from another world, the Leflorn kingdom of the fantasy continent. It was considered a treasure there. It was a book written by an infamous witch who recorded her knowledge before her death. Using it would grant the user B-rank black magic. The audience gasped, but when Baek-jun heard the word witch, he had a bad feeling. The host then said, "Let's take a look at the item description." A new image was projected in the air. As expected, it displayed for female use only. Han Chang-ah noticed this as well. The men in the auction hall groaned in disappointment, while the women let out excited whispers. Han Sung-ah was among the cheering women. Yoo Baek-jun, remembering Han Seong-ah's magical talent, thought that if he checked her traits, she would likely have an A-rank magic talent trait. Meanwhile, Han Seong-ah was worrying about the amount of money she had. Yoo Baek-jun knew that the Swordstar family paid their guards a salary and gave their trainees an allowance. After dealing with items from the gate, they would receive a formal payment. He estimated Han Chang-ah would have tens of billions in her account. He wondered why she was being so frugal. Finally, the host announced, "Thank you for waiting." Surely, many were here for this next item. Then gestured to create a lively atmosphere. He signaled towards the area below the stage. Staff members pulled out a huge iron chest. The host stood before the chest, surveying the stage. After a deliberate pause, he slowly opened the chest. He revealed that the main item for today was from Snowy Moon Mountain, a true treasure among treasures. The remains of a snow tiger. Though clearly deceased, the enormous tiger's glossy white fur, mysterious markings, and the lingering magical aura surrounding it were incredibly captivating. Han Cheng-ya gasped, "It's astonishing!" The amount of magical energy is beyond imagination. Ryu Baek-gun agreed. It truly is a treasure. If properly processed and consumed as a potion, it would be incredibly beneficial. He surmised that some of the hunters gathered here must have come with that very purpose in mind. The auctioneer began the introduction. This specimen was hunted by a professional team and specially preserved immediately after. It looks as fresh as it did when it was alive. Someone in the crowd asked if everything was intact. The auctioneer confirmed the fur, the teeth, the claws, and the heart, the source of the saber-toothed tiger's magic, are all perfectly preserved. Greed flickered in the eyes of the onlookers. The fur could be crafted into powerful armor, the teeth and claws refined into deadly weapons. The heart could be used to create potent elixirs. Someone shouted impatiently, "How much?" "Name your price," another yelled. "Starting bid, 10 billion. The auctioneer's words had barely left his lips when the crowd erupted in a frenzy of bidding. 15 billion, one voice cried out. 20 billion. Han Seong-ae seemed surprised by this display of near madness, having never witnessed anything like it. Baek Jun-yu remained perfectly composed. Han Chang-ah remarked to Baek Jun, "Everyone's acting like they've lost their minds." "They have," Baek Jun agreed. "Let's have some wine to calm our nerves," he suggested. "I've never had wine before," Chang-ah admitted. Baek Jun handed her a glass. Chang-ah gazed at the wine curiously, her attention now completely captured by it. Baek Jun calmly raised his hand. 5 billion! 5 billion! The auctioneer announced loudly. The price had suddenly jumped to 5 billion. All eyes turned to Baek Jun, astonished by the dramatic increase. Some sighed and gave up on bidding, but others weren't ready to concede. Bids of 5.5 billion began to emerge. 6 billion, 6.2 billion, and Baek Jun called out. A hush fell over the room. The attendees were mostly wealthy individuals and hunters, earning more money than the average person. But faced with the price Liu Baijun shouted out, everyone felt they couldn't keep up. Earlier, when bidding on the skill book, Liu Baijun had already displayed his unfathomable wealth. It felt like no matter how much they bid, he could effortlessly outbid them with a smile. The man who had been pestering Liu Baijun earlier was now internally wrestling with the potential gains and losses, but he seemed to feel he couldn't back down. Biting his lip, he continued to bid 101 billion. Liu Baijun immediately countered with 200 billion. Stunned by the soaring price, the man hurriedly followed up with 201 billion. Annoyed by the man's petty increments of only 1 billion, Liu Baijun rolled his eyes and scoffed. He bluntly told the man to leave if he couldn't afford to bid properly. Both were getting tired of this back and forth. The man argued that he also needed the item being auctioned. Baek Jun-ryu claimed it had nothing to do with him. Then, with a sigh, he raised his hand and bid 300 billion. He declared that this was his final offer. The auctioneer announced the 300 billion bid and asked if there were any other bids. His eyes fell on the other man. Sweat poured down the man's face. He tried to raise his trembling hand, but ultimately he couldn't and let it fall back down. The price far exceeded everyone else's expectations, and they abandoned any thoughts of competing. And after calling out 300 billion inches 3 times, the auctioneer slammed the gavel and declared the item sold. Everyone stared at Baek Jun-ryu with intense gazes. They looked at Baek Jun. Some speculated about just how much money he had. Others wondered who he was. He was dressed like a hunter, but no one recognized him as any famous hunter with that kind of wealth. Some were simply stunned by his appearance. Someone thought a face like that must have been in a magazine. Others, noticing Han Seong-ah's attire, wondered if they were members of the Sword Star clan. Yu Baek Jun glanced at the man with the neatly combed hair. The man glared back at Yu Baek Jun, his eyes full of malice. He stared daggers at Yu Baek Jun. The auctioneer then announced the end of the auction, adding that they had prepared several performances to follow. After the auction ended, performers took to the stage. Yu Baek Jun stood up and asked Han Seong-ah if she was ready to leave. Han Seong-ah asked if they should retrieve their item now. Yu Baek Jun confirmed, and they headed towards the item claim area. He made the payment to the staff providing VIP service. He received the item immediately. The staff member handed Yu Baek Jun the skill book and informed her that the backpack contained the snow tiger's carcass. Han Seong-ah was surprised that the snow tiger's body could fit in such a small backpack. The staff member explained it was a magical item. After checking, Han Seong-ah confirmed that the snow tiger's carcass was indeed inside. The staff member explained it had been preserved and would likely last a few weeks before decomposing. Ryu Baek Jun acknowledged this. The staff member asked Ryu Baek Jun if he wanted to take it now. He warned of potential danger and suggested arranging for guards. Ryu Baek Jun shook his head and declined. He then left directly. Han Seong-ah hurriedly followed him. Ryu Baek Jun exited the auction house and suddenly turned to ask Han Seong-ah if she had brought it. Han Seong-ah replied that of course she had, as she needed to protect him. Good, Baek Jun replied. He told him to tighten his grip on his sword. Just then, Baek Jun saw the man from before, the one with the neatly combed hair, along with his group. He realized a confrontation was imminent. He knew about the auction house's side effect, the Tower of Magic Loser incident. It had begun. Hako's body was theirs, or rather, to be more precise, it was something their leader desperately wanted. While things might seem calm now, if someone outbid them for Hako, those guys would resort to extreme measures. They would kill the winning bidder and steal the item. Attacking the auction house was too risky. For Stalzagor, So they preferred to hunt down the winner instead. Just what I wanted, Baekjun thought to himself. Han Seong-ah was puzzled by this. Ryu Baekjun had asked him to contact the soul branch of the Sword Heart family. He claimed this was all part of his plan. Otherwise, he would have accepted the auction house's offer of guards. He said he would have accepted. He also claimed that someone was targeting the family heir. Chae-won thought it was a simple matter. Then he yelled, "It's that woman! Kill her!" He and his companions unleashed their magic. Everyone panicked at the sight. After all, it was a simultaneous magical attack from 20 people. The force was enough to pierce through ordinary magical barriers in an instant. But a pair of bare hands stopped it. Even more shockingly, Ryu Baekjun exhaled. The magic at his fingertips began to melt away, as if it had never existed. The mages yelled, "He's crazy!" and continued to attack, believing that Ryu Baekjun couldn't withstand it forever. The launched magic spell pierced through Ryu Baekjun's body. However, that was just an afterimage left by the Ghost Shadow unit. After the afterimage disappeared, the real Ryu Baekjun appeared. Having absorbed the magic power, Ryu Baekjun exuded a powerful aura. After taking a deep breath, he abruptly took a step forward. With his toes as the center, the spreading magic power froze the entire surrounding area, including the feet of the mages who were trying to escape. Ryu Baekjun exhaled a white breath, lowered his stance, and rushed out like a whirlwind. The newly developed technique for instantaneous bursts of speed created a sheet of ice along his path. Ryu Baekjun twisted his waist greatly as he charged forward, and a chilling cold permeated his fist as he swung it back forcefully. The cold air shot out like a meteor. The blow landed squarely on the shoulder of the leading mage. His breastbone and ribs shattered completely. A gruesome scream echoed through the air. Immediately after, the icy magic clinging to the fist exploded. A chunk of ice, shaped like a dragon's head, hurtled towards the panicked mages in the rear who were desperately trying to retreat. The ice shattered. Shards sharp as needles rained down on the mages. Some were struck in the eyes. Others choked and coughed uncontrollably. With this single attack, half of the 20 mages were incapacitated. The rest were in no better shape. Someone yelled, "He's crazy! What is he doing?" They pointed accusing fingers at Jevin. Jevin pleaded that he had no idea this would happen. He had unconsciously retreated to the very back of the group. Faced with an unprecedented skill and its astonishing power, Javin lost all his fighting spirit after witnessing just that one attack and 2 other skills. He was completely demoralized. Taking trembling steps backward, he announced he would go to the stronghold for reinforcements, ordering his companions to hold off Yu Baekjun and the others. His companions found this absurd, believing a simple communication would suffice. But Javin, without another word, turned and fled. Watching Javin run away, Yu Baekjun let out a chuckle. Han Chang-ah walked up behind him. Yu Baekjun asked Han Chang-ah if she could handle the rest. Han Chang-ah replied, "Of course," calling it a trivial matter. Then she drew her sword. Yu Baekjun stomped his foot. With a thudding sound, his figure vanished. Only Han Chang-ah and the mages remained. The mages, seeing Ryu Baekjun leave, muttered amongst themselves that only one woman was left. They figured they could handle someone of this level. Suddenly, half of the mages were struck by ice shards. Bleeding, they collapsed to the ground, groaning in pain. The other half remained. Han Chang-ah, witnessing the power Ryu Baekjun had just displayed, marveled that he had only learned the skill recently. Yet Ryu Baekjun wielded it with such mastery, and with such devastating force. She thought to herself, as expected, young master is a natural-born genius. But no one realized that she was the first to discover this. A sense of pride welled up within her. She then recalled the knowledge Ryu Baekjun had displayed earlier. She had never heard of the organization called Stalingrad. Yet Ryu Baekjun knew it like the back of his hand, guessing he might have learned it from the books he enjoys reading. As Han Seong-ah was lost in thought, a wavering fireball flew towards him. He furrowed his brow and cleaved the fireball in 2 with a single stroke. The bisected fireball flew past him, exploding against the wall behind him. The mages, witnessing this, cried out in astonishment, "He split it!" They questioned how he could do something so audacious. One mage, struggling to remember, recognized Han Seong-ah's swordsmanship as belonging to the Jeomseong clan. He couldn't help but shout, "The Gomseong clan? That damn Jevin!" Realizing they had provoked the Jeomseong clan, Han Seong-ah slowly spoke, "There are some people in this world you don't cross." The mages questioned his words. Then Han Seong-ah vanished in an instant. The mages looked around in astonishment. Suddenly, one of them had their throat slit. Only a flash of the blade was visible. It wasn't invisibility magic. The speed was simply too fast to see. It was monstrously fast. With each flash of the blade, an arm would fly off. A leg would be severed. Lives were extinguished in screams and sprays of blood. Han Sung-ah sighed, muttering to herself that she just wanted to go back and read. Then, Ryu Baek-jun received a notification that he could accept a new mission. He began to track Kevin. As a mage, Kevin's running speed was limited, even at full sprint. Catching him wouldn't be too difficult for Ryu Baek-jun. After a long pursuit, Kevin, gasping for breath, ran into an ordinary commercial building. Baek-jun knew there was a Stalagard stronghold here. Although their headquarters were overseas, whether known or unknown, Baek-jun was certain that Stalagard's stronghold changed location with every game. The setup, choosing from several candidate locations, was quite troublesome. However, as long as he remembered the internal structure of the candidate locations, conquering them wouldn't be too difficult. Baek-jun turned around and saw a group of people wearing Sword Star family attire. They asked if he was the one who summoned them. Baek-jun confirmed. He chuckled inwardly, knowing they had been lurking in the shadows as guards and observers, keeping an eye on things here. The family heir couldn't possibly. He runs around with only one guard. Unbeknownst to him, the Sword Star family headquarters had assigned secret guards to follow. Liu Baijun gestured towards a building with his chin. He asked if there were any ordinary people inside. After receiving the reply, judging by their auras, no, he ordered everyone inside to be killed. Spare Jevin. After receiving their orders, the group vanished with a whooshing sound. Liu Baijun checked the mission details. It was titled Pest Extermination. The description stated that someone had entrusted him with an item obtained at an auction. He was to locate their base and eliminate them completely. The reward was 200 horses. After reading the mission, Liu Baijun let out a whistle. Power is everything, he mused. He felt this task would be a piece of cake.